Welcome to Kent County Levy Court business meeting for Tuesday, September 27th, 2022. We're meeting in the Levy Court Chambers, room 203 at the Levy Court building at 555 Bay Road, Dover, Delaware. And before I continue with the meeting, I'll turn it over to the county administrator to explain how folks can join us by phone or WebEx.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, everyone. As the President indicated, we are broadcasting this meeting over the internet using the WebEx platform, and we may have guests joining the meeting at various points along the way, and we'll repeat these instructions. But if you're on WebEx and at a point in the meeting you wish to provide comment to Levy Court on any of the items that are before us, if you're on a mobile phone, *3 will raise an electronic hand and we'll be able to recognize you and bring you into the room. If you're on a desktop or laptop, there is a raise hand icon at the bottom of the WebEx screen that you can activate and deactivate at the appropriate time. We ask that you keep your devices on mute until such time as you wish to address Levy Court. And also, some of the items on the agenda tonight are public hearing items, and if you're addressing Levy Court remotely for those items, we will be swearing you in prior to your comments, so we'll ask for your name and address and have you sworn before you provide testimony, just as if you were here in person. Mr. President, we are in business meetings, so we're observing the rules of procedure adopted by Levy Court for business meetings, as well as the Mason's Rules of Order. Back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you. At this time, we'll call the meeting to order. I'll ask Commissioner Howell to lead us in the invocation and Pledge of Allegiance. I'll ask Commissioner Senator-elect Buxton to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And a moment of silence to our troops and first responders. I'll ask Commissioner Sweeney. All rise.
Heavenly Father, we recognize your presence tonight. We ask you to bless all of our proceedings so that they are pleasing to your will. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Please remain standing for a moment of silence to honor our military, law enforcement, firefighters, paramedics, and other first responders who have lost their lives in the line of duty, protecting and fighting for our freedoms. We also honor all first responders and medical staff who have succumbed to COVID-19 virus complications contracted through close interaction with infected patients, losing their lives caring for others. Please remember all of these individuals who died in line of duty this past couple weeks, as well as keeping their families in your thoughts and prayers as they deal with the loss of their loved ones. Police Officer Sierra Burton from the Richmond Police Department, Indiana. K-9 Rocket from the DC Metropolitan Police Department. And right here in Delaware, K-9 Lux from the Delaware Department of Corrections. Thank you.
Ms. Tanaka, can we have a roll call, please, to determine quorum?
Mr. Angel?
Present.
Mr. Buxton?
Present.
Mr. Hall?
Here.
Mr. Howell?
Here.
Mrs. Maston?
Present.
Mr. Sweeney?
Here.
Mr. Pepper?
Here.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 7 present.
Thank you. We do have quorum. Need a motion on the adoption of this evening's agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Can we have roll call, please?
Mr. Angel?
Yes.
Mr. Buxton?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maston?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Pepper?
Yes.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 7 yeas.
Thank you. On our consent agenda 22-11, the first item on the agenda for the consent agenda rate increase for paramedics at special events, and temporary employee hourly increase, Department of Public Safety. Like to remove that from this evening's agenda. And need a motion?
Motion. Second.
I didn't need a motion to,
I'll take a motion or a second, either or, to approve that request.
thank you. Can I have roll call on that, please?
Mr. Angel?
Yes.
Mr. Buxton?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maston?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Pepper?
Yes.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 7 yeas.
Thank you. This time I'll entertain a motion to table that until the October 4th meeting, committee meetings.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Hall, second by Commissioner Howell. Unless there's a question on the motion, can we have roll call on that, please?
Mr. Angel?
Yes.
Mr. Buxton?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maston?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Pepper?
Yes.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 7 yeas.
Thank you. We'll hear that item October 4th at our committee meeting. I need a motion to approve this evening, the remainder of this evening's consent agenda.
So moved, Mr. President. Second.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Angel, second by Commissioner Hall. Can we have a roll call vote on that, please?
Mr. Angel?
Yes.
Mr. Buxton?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maston?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Pepper?
Yes.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 7 yeas.
Thank you. Consent agenda 22-11 with amendment has been approved. This evening we have 4 presentations. The first one is a resolution 3951, retirement of Kevin L. Curtis.
Whereas the retirement of Kevin L. Curtis, an employee of Kent County, State of Delaware, from his duties as computer programmer, Department of Administration, Information Technology Office, presents a suitable opportunity for expressing the esteem in which we hold Kevin L. Curtis as a good and faithful public servant. Therefore, be it resolved that the County of Kent express its warmest appreciation and thanks to Kevin L. Curtis for the able and loyal manner in which he performed his public duties. Be it further resolved that this resolution be his evidence of a right to the pension provided by the Kent County Employees Retirement Program, and that this resolution be and hereby is incorporated into the official minutes of the September 27th, 2022 meeting of the Kent County Levy Court.
Thank you. This is resolution 3951, and we'll take a motion, please.
Move to approve Resolution 3951.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Sweeney, second by Commissioner Angel, resolution 3951. Can we have a vote on that, please? Resolution?
Mr. Angel?
Yes.
Mr. Buxton?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maston?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Pepper?
Yes.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 7 yeas.
Thank you. Resolution 3951 has been approved. Is Kevin here tonight? Want to come on down? Good job. Good job. Congratulations.
Yes.
Come right on up here, Kevin. Well, congratulations. And you've got to be proud that you made it through these years and that you've reached that point where you decided that it's finally time. So congratulations. We wish you the best of luck. The county employees are going to miss you, and the commissioners will too, I'm sure. So at this time, I'll pass it on to Mr. Angel.
I should have told you no. It's hard enough to find people to replace you. But if by some desire you need to come back, please. As you know, we're going through a whole new system, so we could use all the help we can get to. But thank you for your service. And as some people know when it's their time. I just hope that you can come back and help us if we need it.
Maybe he'll decide it's not his time.
Yes. Thank you.
Congratulations and best wishes on your retirement, and thank you for your service to the county.
Appreciate you. We didn't recognize you with that fancy suit you got on. Thought you were stepping in as one of the commissioners. You had us tricked, didn't you? But you look great and welcome. I love the smile. You can tell you're ready for it. You enjoy it. So God bless you for everything you've done. Thank you.
Kevin, congratulations. I can tell you that retirement's glorious, and you're going to love it.
Thanks very much for your service, and enjoy your retirement.
Do appreciate your service. Hope you have a good, healthy, long life. Enjoy your retirement.
Kevin, we're going to miss you here. The resolution says 15 years of service. You became a county employee in October of '07. But you were here before then, because prior to that, we had a contracted service. We did not have our own IT department, but Kevin worked for the contractor who had the job here. And when we created our own department, Kevin was one of the few that we drafted over and hired because we valued you. And so congratulations on this milestone. I know you're going to enjoy it. Get out there and do some hunting and fishing. I know you love that, and happy trails to you.
Your turn.
My turn. Just like cheat sheet. It's only a couple sentences. I would like to thank the county and its employees for a very prosperous 15 years. Outside of the birth of my children, the best thing I ever did was attend Delaware Tech in Wilmington. That's where I got started in information technology nearly 40 years ago. Please accept my gratitude for allowing me the opportunity to finish a successful career here at Kent County Levy Court.
Congratulations. There you go, Kevin. Might have to avoid it. Okay, we have another resolution here, Resolution 3952, retirement of Barbara A. Gibbs. Lori, can you read that in record, please?
Whereas the retirement of Barbara A. Gibbs, an employee of Kent County, State of Delaware, from her duties as custodian, Department of Administration, Facilities Management Office, presents a suitable opportunity for expressing the esteem in which we hold Barbara A. Gibbs, a good and faithful public servant. Therefore, be it resolved that the County of Kent express its warmest appreciation and thanks to Barbara A. Gibbs for the able and loyal manner in which she performed her public duties. We have further resolved that this resolution be her evidence of a right to the pension provided by the Kent County Employees Retirement Program, and that this resolution be and hereby is incorporated into the official minutes of the September 27th, 2022 meeting of the Kent County Levy Court.
Okay, we need a motion on this also.
Move to approve Resolution 3952.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Sweeney, second by Commissioner Angel to approve Resolution 3952. Anybody have any questions? Can we have roll call, please?
Mr. Angel?
Yes.
Mr. Buxton? Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Howell? Mrs. Maston? Mr. Sweeney? Mr. Pepper?
Yes.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 7 yeas.
Is Barbara here or is she hiding too? Oh, there she is. Everybody wants to sit on the other side of the podium. I can't see them. Come on down. Yeah. Another one we're not used to seeing being dressed this way. Wow. Well, Barbara, fantastic job. Thank you. Yeah, you've got a very pleasing personality. We'll miss your smiling face, but then again, we'll wish you the best of luck in your future and all your other endeavors, and we hope you have a lot of them. So, Barbara, congratulations. Pass it on.
Yes, thank you for your service, first of all, and hope you have many, many things on your list you don't have to work for yourself, get somebody else to do for you. So hopefully that helps out.
Congratulations and best wishes on your retirement, and may you have a long and healthy life.
Barbara, you setting the standard now. You and Kevin here, looking lovely tonight. And I'm gonna miss the conversations coming in and leaving, and just saying hi and enjoying the conversation. But I welcome your opportunity to retire. So God bless you. Thank you.
Ms. Gibbs, you've set the standard. Sam's going to have some big shoes to fill. We know that you've taken pride in this building, and we love you for it. We are going to miss you. Congratulations on your retirement. And like I said before, it's glorious.
Thank you. Thank you very much for all that you've done, and I wish you the very best in retirement. Enjoy.
We do wish you the best, lots of family time, whatever you want to do. Thanks for your service.
Barbara, we know you as Gibby. That's what everyone around here calls you. Congratulations on this. Most of your time was spent recently anyway, several years servicing the 911 center and public safety headquarters. My favorite part of your time was when you were assigned to this building, because I got to know you and we had a lot of late night chats and things like that. Always enjoyed your company, and I know you're going to be missed here by your colleagues in facilities and everyone else who you came in contact with. So all the best to you in retirement, and as Commissioner Buxton said, God bless you. I hope you have a great retirement.
Thank you so much.
Sam, you want to say a few words? Looks like you're on the edge of your seat there.
Greatly appreciated. Barbara A. Gibbs, a.k.a. Gibby, I'm going to miss you the most, okay? You did set the standard here. 8 years, perfect attendance for how many? Right? Tremendous. Hardworking, dedicated, reliable employee, right boots on the ground, making me look good. I want to thank you for that. Congratulations.
Your turn.
I didn't write a speech or anything, but first of all, I'd like to thank our Savior, the good Lord. I'd like to thank all my coworkers. I'd like to thank the county, everyone here. I didn't get to know everyone because I come over and a lot of people say, can I help you? And I'm like, yes, I work here. And he's like, you do, where? And I was like, across the street. And he's like, across the street, where? We've never seen you. So, I did pass a lot of people. I just thank everybody for helping me get through this. I've, really enjoyed myself. I learned a few things. So I know the crew is going to carry on.
Well, congratulations. Wish you the best of luck in the world and many, many bright days ahead. All right. So let's get a picture here to document this. Well, the next item on the agenda is the Kent County Levy Court Employee of the Month. And it comes to no surprise that it's Mark Kennedy. Come on down, Mark. Lori, can we have you read this into the official record, please?
Kent County department heads have selected Mark C. Kennedy from the Department of Administration as the October 2022 Employee of the Month. Mark, the Media Systems Coordinator in the Information Technology Office, has worked for Kent County since March 2005. His primary duties include operation of the digital, audio, and computer systems to facilitate viewing of Levy Court, Regional Planning Commission, and other board and committee meetings, as well as design and coordination of county's media messaging system and website maintenance. In addition to maintaining the video information display monitors in the county administrative complex and posting announcements on the county website, Mark is a highly skilled video production editor, creating several public service videos for the county, including such topics as swimming pool safety, comprehensive plan development, and Kent County Public Library. Recently, Mark served as the project lead in transforming county conference rooms into virtual meeting spaces, which now feature full audiovisual connectivity via Microsoft Teams, and he is now actively managing the selection process for a vendor to design a new Kent County website. According to Kent County Administrator Mike Petitdemage, Mark is an extremely knowledgeable and valued member of the Kent County team. His commitment to public service is evident in so many ways and is demonstrated every day through our ability to keep citizens informed and to participate in the business of county government. Visitors to our meeting rooms regularly comment about the high quality of our facilities and our support staff, and specifically about the excellent service of Mark Kennedy. Mark is always ready to help, even for special events on evenings and weekends. He is very deserving of this recognition. Congratulations, Mark, on a job well done, and he resides in Commissioners Angels and Peppers districts. And the tribute reads, Kent County Levy Court, October 2022 Employee of the Month, Mark C. Kennedy. On this, the 27th day of September 2022, the Levy Court of Kent County, State of Delaware, does hereby recognize Mark C. Kennedy, Media Support Coordinator, Department of Administration, Information Technology Office, for his exceptional initiative, dedication, and conscientiousness in the delivery of services to the citizenry of the county.
Thank you, Lori. I just asked Mark if he wrote this. I mean, all these accolades and everything, you know, gee whiz. I know you're quite a person, and you're always here, so it must always all be true, because you're always here, and if it wasn't for you, these Levy Court meetings would not happen. So, and you know, you keep up on all the latest technology, you keep us where we need to be, and where the public expects us to be. Mark, we really do appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, Mark, I remember when you came on board. It was amazing what I learned just from you. A lot of people don't know my video. That was in the video before I got here, way back before it is what it is today. And what I just picked up from you was amazing. And even when we went through these transitions and when we had issues, you knew how to fix the problem, get it done, and get it done right, and save the taxpayers money and the county. So the only thing I can say that I know you did slow down on finally was when you first got here, it seemed like you were having a child a year. It's just, so I don't know what Mr. Pepper's saying about you're always here. So anyway, but best of luck, and a good family man, and I can't wait to see what else you do.
Mark, I must say, being the newcomer here, you've certainly made my transition from the public life to the government a really easy transition. Your infectious smile and your can-do attitude means a lot, especially to someone coming in as well as to the rest. But congratulations, and it's well-deserved.
My friend, you're a victim of your own success. What I mean by that is this. You do such a good job that you go unnoticed. And I say that as a compliment, right? And I officiate wrestling. The best officials are the ones that show up, do their job, and never are noticed. And I liken you to that atmosphere. So well done. Glad you're here. Glad it's your turn. Wish you the best in December. If I had a vote, I'd pull for you.
So he's leaving.
Congratulations.
Hey, as an IT guy, it does my heart good to see an IT guy get this recognition. Mark is a behind-the-scenes guy. He sits up here and you see him, but you don't realize everything he did to make this room work and every other room and computers and our computers on the desk. Very well deserved, Mark. Congratulations.
Yeah, this is very well deserved. Appreciate everything you do for us, and it's a lot. So great job. Congratulations.
You certainly look familiar. I remember a number of times, just capitalizing on what they said, number of times we've had some kind of problem, and Mark here rushed in like the Lone Ranger to save the day, and you did it. So this is very befitting, and I'm tickled pink that you got it.
Mark, no one more deserving than you for this award, for everything that has just been said, and not just in this building, but you've done events outside in the cold, outside in the hot, on Sunday mornings here with the boys, with the 4-H folks, and we've done other events late at night and weekends, and you always make it, and you always make it work well. And, so congratulations. This is a long overdue honor for you. Mark was hired right before we moved into this building, so you kind of came with the building. And so as long as the building's here, you have to be here, because the reason the county hired you for when we built this building was no one knew how to operate this stuff, but you were the guy. Joe, did you want to say, Joe, your director, may have a word or two. Joe.
What I want to say is, all accolades you got, Mark, and it's true. Working for you with a short time for your boss, but I want to let the commissioners and Mike know that our goal for IT, to be very blunt about it, I wanted to be the best in the state, and I can tell you now, without a doubt, our multimedia under Mark's leadership is the best. There's outside agencies come here and have meetings here because they know what we have, we can offer, and not only in here, but like Mike said, throughout the whole county, Mark has made a presence, whether it's the library, whether EMS, rec center. He's involved in everything multimedia, and he is definitely a truly asset to the county. And I appreciate everything he does, and this is very, very, very deserving. So thank you, Mark.
Congratulations, Mark.
One thing I didn't mention, recently we just opened our paramedic station out on Route 8, and we had a little ceremony there with, and of course we had microphones and portable speakers. And how often have you been to an outside event like that, and the microphones cut in and out, or the speakers crackle or whatever? Well, Mark had it set up and we didn't have one glitch, so it came out great. And so, Mark, it was about 98 plus degrees out there. Yeah, the worst thing about it was the moisture dripping off our foreheads while we were up there speaking. But Mark, congratulations, buddy. Your turn to talk now. You never talk, so now's your time.
Thank you very much. One of my mentors told me in AV, he's like, just like what Senator Buxton has said, is that if you do a good job no one will recognize you. That's how you know you've done a good job. But I truly enjoy helping people, and I love, media technology. But it's a great honor to be recognized for the work that I do. But, by all means, when I come in here and I'm able to help everybody, just do a small thing, I get a lot of joy out of that. So I appreciate this honor. I'm going to enjoy it, especially that day off or something like that I think we got. I'm going to utilize that for sure. But I really appreciate that. But and the family that's here, Kent County took me in from New York, almost 18 years ago, and it's been a great move for us. So thank you very much for this honor. I really, really appreciate it.
All right. Alan, you doing the next one? This ICO 2022 Achievement Award.
Yeah.
Oh, Kelly? We have one more item on our presentations, and we'll get down to the public hearings. The next item, item number 4, is NACO, National Association of Counties, 2022 Achievement Award for Kent County. And Kelly, I understand you're going to do that?
I am.
All right, take it away.
All right. I want to present to you and Vice President Angel and the members of the Levy Court the 2022 Achievement Award that we received from NACO. We were recruited by the state to participate in a statewide effort to remediate the COVID-19. I was on the communications task force, and it was all hands on decks, fed, state, local, communities, medical community, businesses. We were all involved, and we knew that our communication plan had to be fluid and adaptable because we knew how fast that virus was going to mutate and how fast things would change. Originally, the goal was to have at least one dose administered over a 32-week period. And a year later, that plan had to be refined and more targeted to address the information war and the speed at which this virus was spreading, which is how members from each county got broken off from the original task force, and I became a part of the Kent County Coalition. And so I put in the entry, and it was titled, "A Community Comes Together to Protect Its Health, Society, and Economy." It was in the Risk Management Award category, and described how we were involved in intergovernmental activities to remediate the virus. I demonstrated how our departments were involved with public health, the National Guard, DelDOT, DMV, Dover Motor Speedway, and others, and how our bookmobile was used in communities as vaccination clinics. We also helped the CDCC with PPE and cleaning supplies through the Business Relief Fund. We advanced diversity, equity, and inclusion through the use of the bookmobile in underserved communities. The success that we had in this program was we helped the state meet its 70% goal of having at least one dose of the vaccination administered by July 1st of 2021. And through the coalition, we also vaccinated another 13,210 people at the time that the entry was submitted. And we're still out there and vaccinating almost twice a week. It seems like every week. So from that, I wanted to, through the code, let me see. Through that, the bookmobiles become more popular. We gain more patrons at the library. They're definitely requested now more out in the community. And our public safety department, our medics, they faced an unseen enemy and battling something that they had never seen before every day. The 911 center devised special priority codes for people that they suspected had COVID. And, looking back, every department within Kent County Levy Court was involved. From facilities management, who had to reconfigure the building, the maintenance staff adjusting their hours, public works, planning, everybody when I look back. So I just want to present this award to you. I thank you for the opportunity to represent Kent County, because this was a challenge. I thought it would be easy, but I was getting up at 4 a.m. to write, come to work, go home, write some more. But we finally got it in. We got it in on time. And I do have a copy of it, of my entry here, but it's also on NACO's website if you want to go and take a look.
Wow.
So
That's great, Kelly. Wow. That's fantastic. Kelly, thank you for all that effort that you put into that, but I'm not surprised. And the reason I say that is folks in the audience don't know Kelly, and they don't know what you do. When the commissioners are involved in something in the community, we don't know you're going to be there, and you pop up taking pictures of us. It's amazing. Kelly, how are you? And so yes, get in here. This is your award, and we're just going to hold on to it for you. But without you, we would never have been recognized for this. So Kelly, thank you. Yes. And I guess Laura's going to take the pictures. Okay. All right. Let me put this down. Me on 3. Hold on a second. Thank you, Kelly.
thank you.
Thank you very
Where do you
much.
want to put it?
I don't know. We'll find a place for that. That's special. Thank you. Any other commissioner want to say anything?
Yeah. I want to just take note of the fact that you did all the work and then gave us all the credit. Typical politicians will accept it, but thank you very much. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Kelly, it goes without saying, everything you do, you give 110%. So anything less than what you just achieved would be a surprise. Congratulations, always on a job well done.
Thank you.
And Kelly, you gave me a heads up that we were going to receive an award. And when I got there, they'd already presented it by the time I got there. That cart's a little slow when you're in Denver and trying to get around the Gaylord. That's all I can say. But when I did ask President Johnson about it at the time, he said, I'm sure she'll get it when it's sent to you. So I'm glad you got it.
We got it.
Good deal.
Kelly, thanks for everything that you did for us. We appreciate it. Not everybody in the county believed in COVID the way that we did, so you represented us well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great work as usual. Thanks very much for everything that you did.
Thank you.
Just one more of the many, many, many things you have to do on a daily basis. Appreciate it. Good job.
Kelly, it's great to have you on staff, and this is why you give 110%, and I know that was an extra push for you, but your compassion for other people is what drove you, and so thank you for that, because you bring it every day.
Thank you. So thank you. Thank you.
All right, now we can go to work. Okay, it's 7:41, about the past 35 minutes, we've taken that time to recognize our family of employees here at Kent County. I won't apologize for it because it's something that we like to do, is recognize the accomplishments that are created here in the building or in our other facilities. So, but I will thank you for being patient, and I hope you feel like you've really taken part in something. So thank you very much. So now we'll start the public hearings. First public hearing is fiscal year 23 DTC reimbursable transportation budget for senior transportation services. It falls under Mrs. Maston, and if you want to give some comments before we open the public hearing, or we've got Mrs. Durham here.
Do you want me to speak to it?
Go ahead, Mrs. Durham.
Okay. So on the 13th of September, we discussed the allocation of the Senior Center Transportation Grant this year for the same amount as last year for the 600 and, shoot, I had the number, $647,432, of which $50,000 automatically goes to Senior Center, and the other $597,432 gets divided out. This year we had an unusual circumstance in that everybody's budget, the total of, everybody's actual expenses exceeded the amount of the grant. We hadn't had that happen, and that was probably due to fuel cost because everybody's budget went over what they really thought they were going to spend in last year. So what we did was, I used a weighted average approach, and it's about 92% of the, we received 92% of the budget in comparison to the actual expenditures. So we took that against their actual expenditures for 2022, and that was the allocation that we gave. Mike and I discussed it and thought that was about the fairest way to allocate it. Because they have to propose their budgets so far in advance. They propose them like in August of 2021 for FY23, and that wasn't realistic because a lot happened after that. So we just used the actual expenditures and then gave them about 92% of what they received, of what they actually spent in 2022. Any questions?
Any questions, Mr. Commissioner Buxton?
Not a question, maybe a comment, right? KSI, our partners, who typically have enjoyed, it's called maybe a little leftover money, and they're going to get nothing now. Communicate with them in a kind of simplistic way why they're getting zero.
Sure.
You know, I don't need a detailed explanation. I just think in fairness, if they're going to get zero, at least let them know why. We didn't forget about them.
No.
Right.
This is actually will be their second year that they got zero. They didn't get any last year either. So.
Any other questions, Mr. Durham? Thank you.
You're welcome.
As I stated earlier, this is a Resolution 3955, and it is a public hearing. So at this time, we'll open the public hearing on this item, and I'll ask anyone in the audience here that is in favor of this to please come forward. Anyone in favor of Resolution 3955, please come forward. Mark, anyone online?
We have no public participating online at this time, Mr. President.
Okay, great, thank you. At this time, anyone opposed to Resolution 3955, please come forward. Anyone opposed, please come forward. And still no one online.
That's correct, Mr. President. No one online.
Okay. Any questions before I close the public hearing? All right, this time I'll close the public hearing. Turn over to Commissioner Maston for a motion, please.
I'd like to make a motion to accept Resolution 3955, fiscal year 23 Delaware Transit Corporation reimbursable transportation budget in the amount of $647,432.
Second the motion.
Thank you. We have a motion by Commissioner Madison, second by Commissioner Angel. Does anyone have any questions on the motion? I don't see any. Can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Angel?
Yes, reason stated by Ms. Durham.
Mr. Buxton?
Yes, for reasons stated.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes, reason stated.
Mrs. Maston?
Yes, reason stated.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes, for reasons stated.
Mr. Pepper?
Yes, for reasons stated.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 7 yeas.
Thank you. Roll call reveals Resolution 3955 has been approved by Levy Court. Commissioner Masson, item number 2, ordinance LC 22-19.
An ordinance authorizing the issuance of a Kent County general obligation bond in the amount not to exceed $17 million for the biosolids capacity expansion project and authorizing all necessary actions and connections therewith. Mrs. Durham?
Yes, I'm representing Diana tonight. This would be for the, as you indicated, for the biosolids capacity project, which is approximately $36 million. This is $17 million of it will be a bond, and the rest of it will be financed by impact fees. So this represents the bond portion of that.
Any commissioners have any questions? Mr. Buxton looks like he's sitting on the end of a seat to ask one, but.
And that's her water.
All right, this is also a public hearing, and at this time, we'll open that public hearing, and I'll ask anyone in the audience that is in favor of ordinance LC 22-19 to please come forward. Anyone in favor, please come forward.
We have no participating online at this time, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mark. At this time, I'll ask anyone in the audience that is opposed to ordinance LC 22-19 to please come forward. Anyone opposed?
No one opposed online at this time, Mr. President.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions before we proceed to a motion? Commissioner Masson, I ask for a motion.
Motion to accept ordinance LC 2219, an ordinance authorizing the issuance of a Kent County general obligation bond in an amount not to exceed $17 million for the biosolids capacity expansion project and authorizing all necessary actions in connection therewith.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Masson, second by Commissioner Howe. Any questions? Seeing none, can we have roll call, please?
Mr. Angel?
Yes, reason stated.
Mr. Buxton?
Yes, reasons stated.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes, reason stated.
Mrs. Maston?
Yes, reason stated.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes, for all reasons stated.
Mr. Pepper?
Yes, per Mrs. Durham's testimony, all reasons stated.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 7 yeas.
Thank you. Roll call reveals ordinance LC 22-19 has been approved by Levy Court.
Get back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to move into petitions for conditional use requiring site plan approval. The first item on the agenda falls under Commissioner Howe.
Thank you, Mr. President. We'll ask Ms. Kiefer to elucidate us.
Good evening, Commissioners. Before we begin, just a word about how the hearings tonight will be conducted. These public hearings are conducted for the purpose of giving the citizens of the county the opportunity to present testimony on the applications before the Levy Court. Everyone will have a chance to speak. All statements are to be made from the podium at the front of the room. For the record, please give your name and address. Copies of any written statements or exhibits used during the hearing should be presented for identification and inclusion in the record. For each application before the Levy Court, the President will introduce the application. Then the Levy Court will take testimony from all of those in favor. Testimony will then be received from those who may be opposed. After everyone has had an opportunity to speak, the hearing on the application will be closed, and the Levy Court will take what action it deems appropriate. Levy Court's decision will be based upon public hearing testimony given at this meeting and a recommendation submitted to the Levy Court by the Regional Planning Commission. I would ask that that recommendation be included by reference in the permanent record of the meeting established by the Clerk of the Peace. The public notice of this hearing was published in the September 9th, 2022 edition of the Delaware State News. The first application before the Levy Court, CS 2204, is a conditional use site plan application for a public utility use. This application and the two following, just to level set, they look like community solar projects that ordinarily would be administrative. In this case, because they're in the co-ops area and not contemplated in our definition of community solar, their only opportunity to be heard is to be processed as a public utility use. But these are all small-scale projects. So this one in particular, the site is zoned AC, agricultural conservation. The site area is just under 26 acres on the south side of Burnite Mill Road, west of Hopkins Cemetery Road, west of Felton. The Regional Planning Commission took testimony at their September 1st hearing, and at their September 8th business meeting did recommend conditional approval. It should be noted the Planning Commission did recommend a number of waivers. Again, this comes from the fact that because it's being processed as a proper site plan, it comes with a requirement typically from our land development regulations, sidewalk installation, buffers, etc. What the staff and then the Planning Commission recommended was to waive those requirements that come out of Chapter 187 and instead recommend conditions that we normally associate with community solar. The applicant has agreed to virtually all of those conditions. The one outstanding, and this was a recommendation by the Planning Commission, is there are a couple of boundaries where the applicant is not proposing tree planting. Instead, the applicant is proposing to rely on trees on an adjacent property to provide the buffer. Planning Commission recommends, as with virtually every other application the county sees, the required buffer be on the subject property. Another alternative Levy Court may consider is if the applicant could get an easement on the adjacent properties to maintain those trees there. But again, it does come with a recommendation for approval. The applicant, by and large, has agreed to all of the conditions associated with community solar. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
So basically, what regional planning is requiring is the buffer to be on that property because there's no guarantee that the trees on the adjoining property will always be there.
Correct.
Right. Any other questions? Mr. Sweeney.
Thanks, Mr. President. So, Ms. Kiefer, how hard is it to get an easement on an adjoining property?
It would depend on the property owner and how open they were to it. I think it's worth noting that much of the area is in wetland. The likelihood of those trees being removed is slim, but it's not none. You can cut trees in wetlands, you just can't remove stumps.
So I'm looking at just the adjoining properties. There's probably 350 acres of trees that surround that property on that side. So an easement would require the applicant to go to the owners of those properties and offer some kind of monetary offer.
Typically, that's how it
just
works.
to say, we don't want you to take these out of trees.
For just a small buffer area, it certainly wouldn't be the entirety of the property.
So is that something we can make conditionally? And if they don't get an accepted offer from the owner, then they must follow through with the condition that they put a barrier of trees on their property? Can we do that?
I think that's reasonable.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing no other questions from the commissioners, at this time we will open the public hearing on application CS-22-04 American Holly Solar Farm. And I'll ask anyone in the audience that is in favor of this application to please come forward and offer testimony as to why Levy Court should approve it.
My name is Yannick Tam. I represent EDF Renewables.
Okay,
And
you need to be sworn.
Yep.
Unless you're an attorney. Are you an attorney?
No, I'm not.
Okay, you need to be sworn or affirmed by our attorney.
Sir, do you wish to affirm?
I'm sorry?
Do you wish to swear or affirm?
Yes. Yes.
Which one? On the Bible or not?
On the Bible.
Do you solemnly swear upon the Holy Bible that the testimony you give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Go ahead and proceed.
Thank you. And with you guys' approval, I'd like to walk through a brief PowerPoint presentation on the projects, starting with American Holly, and then, of course, take the break and then get into the other two projects as well. But first of all, yeah, like I said, my name is Yannick Tam. I'm a manager of project development at EDF Renewables. I'm also here with Jeff Matron, also from EDF Renewables, also on the development team, as well as Dave Shapley, VP at Delaware Electric Cooperative, and he'll talk a little bit about our partnership with these projects, as well as Alex Schmidt from Century Engineering, who is our civil engineer and environmental consultant. So our intent is to give a very brief overview of who EDF is as a company, and some general information about solar, and then jump into the project specifics if that works for the commissioners. So to start with, who is EDF Renewables? We are a developer, a turnkey developer, financier, EPC, and O&M company of all things renewables. So that is wind, solar, storage, carports, charging stations, pretty much everything. And we're broken up into 4 different business units, as you see on the slide here. There's grid scale power, distribution scale power, on-site solutions, and asset optimization. The grid scale group is the group that develops these very large scale, utility scale projects that are hundreds, sometimes even thousands of acres in size. But Jeff and I, and these projects today fall under the distribution scale power projects, which typically range from 2 to 30 megawatts, around 30-ish acres in size. And one of the benefits we'll talk about a little bit more in some coming slides of distribution scale power is that it can be locally sited and tapped directly into the distribution system, as opposed to the transmission system. The transmission system being those large power lines, rather than the distribution systems, which are the ones that go, locally to your homes and businesses locally. And what that does is provides opportunity to provide green, pollution-free electricity locally that stays locally and consumed by folks in the community. And the last thing I want to touch on, we also have an asset optimization group that does a lot of O&M work for these types of projects. So a little bit about our market experience. We have over 35 years of experience at the TSP group, over 1,400 megawatts of projects installed. As you see in the map on the right, we have a pretty widespread of states that we operate in, pretty heavy presence in the Mid-Atlantic as well. In fact, we have 2 projects under later stage development, more advanced stage development, actually in Sussex County, ongoing right now. And we have obviously these 3 going on in Kent that we are hoping to get approval for today. And at this point, I'd like to ask Dave Shapley from Delaware Electric to talk a little bit about our partnership, as well as the importance of these projects to Delaware Electric.
Appreciate you. Yes, as Yannick said, my name is David Shapley. I'm Vice President. I'm sorry, was there a question?
Yep,
okay, I swear. It's okay.
Do you solemnly swear upon the Holy Bible that the testimony you give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do. Okay. As I mentioned, my name is David Shapley. I'm Vice President at Delaware Electric Co-op. So these 3 projects, DEC is working with EDF. We've entered a purchase power agreement to procure the power generated by these 3 projects in Kent County. We also hold an option to purchase these projects outright if we so desire. As you know, DEC is a non-for-profit organization owned by the members it serves, and we're very supportive of the local community. We serve over 108,000 meters in Kent and Sussex County. These projects are specifically designed
to hook to DEC's distribution system, not transmission system, and to serve the customer load in these areas that these solar sites are located, thus reducing the electricity costs within that area. These projects generate electricity in communities where power is consumed and thereby reduces the need for long transmission lines and other costly high voltage infrastructure. These projects will provide clean, renewable power to the end user. These projects will improve grid resiliency to the local distribution grid and can deliver power at low cost to the end user. DEC is committed to meeting our renewable portfolio standards by the year 2025, which is why we're entering these projects with EDF.
Thank you, Dave. All right, so very briefly, these are the three projects that
Can you hold on 1 second?
Yes.
Behind the video up there, there was a number. You're committed 235. You're committed to what was that number? If you go to the previous page. I know what that is, but what's that number behind? What is that behind that?
Oh, I can't.
I'm just curious what it means. That's all.
Yeah, so
there it is, 10%. Okay, there you go.
Sorry.
All righty, thank you.
Technical challenges, sorry about that.
Something that the requirement, I thought it was like some kind of a 40% requirement per state law that you have an energy portfolio of about 40% by 235. Am I misreading that?
No, you are correct, but there has to be a certain percentage that is met by solar. Yes, yes.
So 40%, but only 10% can come from solar?
Well, you can meet it either way. You can meet it through RECs, which is renewable energy credits,
Okay.
such as wind, landfill gas, and there's SRECs, which is solar energy credits. So our requirement is to meet the 10% requirement, or yeah, we have to meet 10%.
Just a dummy question for me. Can you have a portfolio that's 40% solar and meet the state requirements?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, you can use a solar REC
All right.
for a renewable energy credit, but you can't use it in reverse.
Got it, thank you.
Oh. Thank you. All right, so again, these are the three projects. We'll talk about American Holly first, but all located in western part of Kent County. And another thing I wanted to point out is that all three of these projects, we've entered into options to lease the property, the portion of the project of the property from the landowners. This will not be a purchase situation. It's a lease situation. Again, we touched a bit on this just to re-emphasize it. These are distributed scale projects. As you can see in the figure, kind of like to the left half of the screen, we're generating solar, clean, pollution-free solar energy going directly to the distribution system, those power lines, and directly to homes and businesses that are local, as opposed to the larger scale projects that can ship the power, many miles away. And another benefit of these local projects is that it can offset the need for more expensive transmission level upgrades. So it can provide, cheap power because of that. No problem. Might be running low.
Let me interrupt you here for just a second.
Yes.
I realize you're representing all three of these.
Right.
So what I'd like to do, because we're going to have separate hearings on each one, is you can explain all the likenesses, but then when we go to each application, explain what the differences are.
Absolutely.
Okay? So that way you won't have to repeat the likenesses. All right?
Absolutely.
Clear?
Yep.
Okay.
And that is our intention as well.
Okay, go ahead.
These
Proceed.
first few slides are just general, and then they'll get specific just to the project. I'll breeze over this. This is just typical project equipment for projects such as this. The first would be the racking system that's on support posts. So these are just H piles that are driven into the ground. There's a single axis. These are single axis tracker projects, meaning that cylindrical tube here along the back of the racking system will rotate in one axis from east to west, following the path of the sun throughout the day to maximize the generation of the project. Number 2 is a typical solar panel that you all have, I'm sure, seen before. 3 would be the string inverters that are located on the back of the racking system. So they're located on the back here. And what those are for is to convert the power. So solar panels generate electricity in DC, direct current. However, what is used on the grid is AC, alternating current. So these inverters will convert the power from the DC to the AC to be used on the grid and then ultimately by the end user. 4 is typical transformer that you would see, next to a commercial building or whatnot. And what this is for is just to step up the power to the appropriate voltage to meet the voltage of the distribution system along the street. Number 5 is the interconnection equipment. So each of these projects will require 5 utility poles that look just like the poles that are already along the road on all these roads for safety and metering equipment to interconnect into the system. And 6 is just a general picture of a project that fits nicely within the landscape and within the existing vegetation, which is somewhat similar to what we see for these projects. Thank you. Typical construction timeline for this size of project is around 6 to 8 months. All the way from site prep to foundation work, the module install, the electrical install, and then commissioning, which is the testing period. And then finally, the last general slide before getting into the project specific is I just want to touch on that solar is a passive use of land. It really just it sits there passively, generating electricity quietly during its operation. It doesn't put any strain on public infrastructure like sewage or water. Doesn't generate any additional traffic during its operation. I'll touch on this in a little bit, but we typically mow the fields underneath the solar array twice a year to minimize the shading that happens from grass growth, and very occasional maintenance trips. But other than that, this just is a passive use of land. So now into the project specifics of American Holly, and then we'll stop there. So American Holly, as mentioned, is in the Agricultural Conservation District, located slightly west of Felton. Again, the applicant is American Holly. This is a 4 megawatt size project, which is approximately about 26 acres, in this case on Long Burnite Mill Road in Felton, Delaware. And as mentioned, it'll connect directly into the Delaware Electric's distribution system via an existing line, and will also require those 5 utility poles on the project site for the interconnection equipment. And the anticipated start of construction would be Q1 or Q2 of next year, assuming approval, and then a commercial operation by the end of that year. And now focusing the attention to the right is a preliminary layout. The white being the access drive that brings you back to the site. This is just a simple gravel road. The orange being the actual modules that are single axis that rotate from east to west throughout the day. The blue is the fixed knot agricultural style fence, security fence that's 7 feet tall. So this is not a chain link fence. This is an agricultural style fence, cedar posts, mesh wiring with about 6-inch gaps between that allows the passage for small wildlife throughout the project. So it fits in nicely with the character of the land. And then, just one last thing. And then the green along the front is a proposed landscaping plan, which I'll talk about in more detail later. This slide shows Century performed with their certified wetland scientist a wetland delineation And as you can see, pretty much the entire wooded area in the back and the west of the site is located within wetlands, as well as some of these 2 farm ponds at the back of the site here. So we're just showing this to show that we are offsetting, or we are set back from all of these wetlands by 100 feet, and we're not encroaching on any of them or proposing to cut down any trees at all. It's all in the open agricultural field. We like to show this to give a sense of the environmental attributes of the project. So the projects, the green electricity, the pollution-free electricity generated from this project will offset about 6,573 metric tons of CO2 that would normally have been generated from more traditional sources. And so what does that mean? Like comparing it to other things that come to mind, it's about the equivalent of the electricity consumption of about 1,200 homes, and the carbon sequestered by almost 8,000 acres of U.S. forests today. So there's tremendous environmental benefit to these projects. That brings us to our waiver request. So waiver request number 1 is the requirement to provide a sidewalk along arterial roadway frontage of the property. Justification for this waiver request is that there's no existing sidewalk along Burnite Mill Road. This is an agricultural area, not much foot traffic. And secondly, the project will not increase foot traffic during its operation. The second waiver request is the requirement to provide 1 tree per 3,000 square feet of site area for non-residential development. So as I previously mentioned, we're proposing to develop this all in the open agricultural field and not cut down, and so we'll preserve all of the trees that are already on the parcel, which in this case is about 68 acres of trees. But even so, we're still proposing to plant about 192 trees in accordance with the solar ordinance along the frontage there, where there isn't already existing natural screening. The third point here is that we'd also like to maintain the agricultural use of the remainder of the project. So we've worked with the project for the property owner who had the desire to continue to farm as much of the property that he still could. So because of that, we pushed the project to the back of the site, which allows him to still farm in the front half of the property. And you can actually see this little dot here is a central kind of irrigation system. So he could still use the irrigation pivot system for about the front half of this property. So, we'd like to maintain as much of that productive land as possible. So that is another justification for, not planting trees in areas where he could normally use that for farming. And then finally, this type of planting would provide an excessive financial burden on a small project like this. So where our projects differ is that we're, small scale. We can't take advantage of the economies of scale of some of these utility scale projects that are, hundreds or even thousands of acres in size. So it would be quite a challenge to plant all those additional trees. And then finally, the third waiver is a requirement to provide visual and sound screening when abutting a residential use. As previously mentioned, we like to develop smart screening, so screening in areas where there isn't already existing vegetation that does that screening already. So again, the back in the western part of the project, as well as along the eastern property boundary, already has a significant amount of vegetation. In fact, the area in the back is a 30-year warranty easement deed, which is basically a conservation easement to conserve the wetlands, which creates additional. Sorry, do you have a question?
Well, I really didn't want to interrupt you. I thought I saw a period coming, so I raised my hand to get your attention. But
okay.
Listen, I'm going to let the cat out of the bag. As far as I'm concerned, I'm going to vote for all 3 of these items, but it's not because I'm pro-solar, it's because I'm pro-property rights. Okay? Now, having said that, I want to ask you this question. If all of this solar stuff is really being effective, why in the world is the price of electricity going up? My electric bill went up $97. What's your explanation?
you want to take that? All right, I'll let you take that.
Really, the biggest cost driver with the price of electricity going up is natural gas. With the war in Ukraine, we're seeing a lot of natural gas overseas. Liquefied natural gas is going overseas. The price of natural gas before the war in Ukraine started was $3 a million BTU. Now it's up over $9 a million BTU. So that affects all the generation, all the gas generation throughout the whole country. So that's really the biggest driver of the cost of electricity going up.
Well, that's kind of what I figured, and I appreciate you giving that answer. And believe me, I'll repeat it many times because many people don't know it.
Yes, yes.
Sweeney. Mr. Shapley, real quick. If these, and again, I'm going to ask a question about all three projects in total, so I don't have to ask it 3 times. If these projects didn't go in, what would Delaware Electric Co-op have to do in the future in order to meet the needs of the customers?
We were having to purchase higher cost power. So, I mean, right now, the cost on the open market is more than the cost of these projects. So if we were not to get these projects, we would have to go to the open market through our power supplier, ODEC, Old Dominion Electric Cooperative, and purchase power on the open market.
No plans to increase your own production of energy?
We do not own any generation.
Don't? Oh,
no, we do not.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's why you're
aside from solar farms, that's the only generation
Right.
we own. If you want to count solar farm as generation, of course, it's not 8760, 24/7.
Yeah.
It's just during daylight
Okay.
hours. Okay.
Thanks. Mr. Tam, real quick.
Yes.
So I want you to understand our position about why we can't depend on somebody else's property for that vegetation buffer. I mean, it's common. I mean, this is something, you can't depend on somebody else to do something in order to protect your line. So have you been in contact with either of the two homeowners or residents, landowners of those two properties that abut that eastern border?
Yes, so we have been in contact with the Melling family, which is on the southern side. So I just went to the next slide, which I was getting to this. So in conversations with them, as well as the recommendations from the Planning Commission and staff, we're proposing some additional screening along that residence, along the property line, where there's already some existing vegetation, an existing tree line, but just an additional planted buffer along that property line. The reason why we are not proposing vegetation further to the north along the eastern property boundary is because there's no residence that is located on that property. It's open field and forest land, as you can see.
Right, but the 35 years estimated life of your project, there could very likely be somebody in that time period who wants to come in and put a house and would want to do, clearing of the trees in order to put a home, which is now going to put us in a position where, they're going to have line of sight into your project, which is what we're trying to avoid. So if you're willing to talk to Mr. Glisson and ask him about purchasing an easement, which would require them under the easement to leave those trees there, then everybody wins at that point. If not, then my recommendation is still going to be to deny that waiver for the the screening along that eastern border.
Commissioner Sweeney, for all the reasons you stated, I agree with you.
Me too.
I mean, we can spend some time and approach them and see.
We can make it a condition that you must attempt to get the easement first, and if you don't get the easement, then you have to put in the buffer along that eastern border.
Is there an opportunity to, along that, the portion that is not, currently does not have a residence, I understand the position of the future being unknown, to plant something like switchgrass or more seedlings that may take a little bit longer to grow, but maybe a little bit easier to install and more effective to catch
I'd have to
along
defer.
that portion where is no residence.
Let me defer to Ms. Kiefer. I think we have very specific tree types that we want to put in there that are more fast growing in order to, provide that buffer quicker. But if there's already a vegetation on the other side of the property, I don't know if there's a way that we can allow a different type of tree in that area.
Thank you, Commissioners. I wouldn't necessarily recommend switchgrass. What the code calls for is 6-foot high buffer planting. I don't know that it would be unreasonable to say a smaller tree could be planted as long as we ultimately, within a reasonable amount of time, achieve the 6 foot. So I think that's reasonable.
Okay, thanks. Just be sworn in.
Jeff Matron, EDF Renewables.
What's your last name, sir?
Matron, Jeff Matron.
Oh, your last name.
Machiran.
Thank you.
Do you solemnly swear upon the Holy Bible that the testimony you give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. Thank you all. As I said, Jeff Matron. And I believe Yannick alluded to this, and this speaks to the question that you, sir, asked a little while ago, why are your prices going up? Energy prices, like everything else, is going up because of inflation. As Yannick mentioned, these projects, they're not large utility scale size projects, so they can't take advantage of the same economies of scale that, say, a much larger project can. They're more size similar to a community project, which can sell its electricity at a retail rate, which is much higher. We're kind of in that in-between area where it's a much smaller project, but it uses less land, but we can't take advantage of the economies of scale that a bigger one does. So the reason we're proposing screening along where there's none existing is because it screens the project from any existing traffic, neighbors, as is, but with the existing, we don't have to plant trees. We're basically not screening trees, which these projects can't afford to do. I mean, we just don't have that. So yeah, we can reach out, and we will reach out to the neighbors, see if we can get an easement. That's fair, but if we can't get it, these projects, they simply can't afford it. We don't have that kind of economic cushioning with these smaller projects.
Don't get me wrong, I understand. I'm a huge proponent of solar. I want them going in. I think we need to ease the restrictions for solar, but the county has rules that we have to follow, and one of those rules is we need to protect the neighbors. Not you. We're trying to protect the neighbors, and those neighbors may want to develop their land at some point, and if they develop their land and they have no easement, they can cut down the trees right to their property line. Then you guys are in a position where now your solar panels are exposed, and that's what we're trying to avoid.
Well, I understand completely what you're trying to avoid.
So Ms. Kiefer mentioned a smaller tree, but as long as the ultimate goal is for it to be 6 feet high, is that? I mean, that's a cheaper tree. We're not asking you to put in.
Well, that certainly helps,
conifers.
yes. But I mean, I'm just trying to. These are very realistic considerations that we have to look at as developers, is how we can meet this. We understood the conditions coming into this, but I mean, that's why we were asking for the waivers, because it does place an extremely large financial burden on these much smaller projects. So we certainly will work, but I just want to put on the record what our concerns are.
All right, thanks.
If it pleases the commission, I'd like to ask a question. Is there an option available that if that land ever gets developed and a house goes on there, that we would then plant trees to meet the county's code? Would that be a consideration?
When we approved these solar ordinances last year, we barely got those passed by and got community acceptance from them. To change the ordinance now to say, okay, when something happens at some point later in the future, we would have to bond you for that and say, that may not happen, but if it does, you better have money to put in a 200-foot line of trees, which I don't think you guys want to be put in that position either. We're already asking to bond for reclamation, so.
Any more questions for Commissioner Buxton?
Clarification of sorts. We're speaking specifically to the 2 rows of buffering, not the tree planting requirement that you're hung up on if we applied conditional use application, correct? You're not arguing that because I think you're going to get that waiver.
This is for the screening
Just the
requirement.
2 rows. Right, all right. And so the option was to plant something smaller, which would, in theory, be more inexpensive, more affordable. Your response is that, given the land and where you're putting it, it seems like an overreach on the request. And it is.
Right.
It is. Unfortunately, though, we have the situation we have, which is how do we make sure that we honor the agreement to make sure these are buffered at all times? Like it or not, they're buffered at all times. An easement probably is the best option. I understand what Commissioner Sweeney said, but I would like maybe a clarification. If there is a way to write something in, doesn't require a bond, where if the land in the back was developed, that we could hold their feet to the fire and make them put in the remaining screening. Some form of fashion, pull a permit, put a work stoppage in, something like that, until they come to the table and agree to the planning, short of a bond. I don't know if that's a legal question. I don't know if that's a Ms. Kiefer question. We don't want to be hostile to the projects. It is what it is, right? I'm tired of solar. If I had my way, we wouldn't have solar. We have it, so let's deal with it, right? Community solar, which is effectively where we are with this project. You wouldn't be in front of us right now. Well, you might be, because you'd be asking for a relief from this rule. So we don't want to be hostile. Is there a path forward? Can they use the buffering in the back, which effectively screens it, and put something in there that says, if by chance some of the trees are somehow taken down and something's developed back there, we can bring them back to the table?
I certainly wouldn't say that you can't do it. I think in terms of administering such a condition like that so far into the future, Levy Court runs the risk of it just getting missed. Right? It won't get triggered.
Recorded in the application, something identifiable that the adjacent landowners are informed of that can be recorded. I don't know, something recorded with them. I know this is complicated, but...
Because this application affects only this property.
Yep.
Nothing will, if somebody comes in the future for a building permit on one of the other parcels, I don't have an automatic way to trigger it.
They agreed to something like that was recorded. Right. Yeah, I wasn't not completely prepared to solve this problem, is where we are. So at the end of the day, if it can't be solved, it is what it is. So, all right, I'm good, unless somebody has some. Commissioner Hall, maybe.
Mr. Angel.
Thank you. Ms. Kiefer. Well, first of all, I want to say that if we had a crystal ball, we wouldn't be in this predicament because we'd have things figured out by now. But ever since I've been a commissioner, one of the things I've been told was when farmland gets sold up, whether it's for solar or houses, whatever, realtors will say, oh, that farm's, it's going to be farm forever. Well, that hasn't happened. And we always get the people that have houses built there, that their sites and then what we're expecting is not there. So it'd be like what Commissioner Sweeney's saying, to look into the future, having some trees put there as a buffer. I don't see nothing wrong with it. I know we have waivers, but at some point in time, land could get sold. We don't know, for other purposes. Is that correct?
That's correct, which is why staff recommended we plant something.
And then I have a letter dated July 13th from Century Engineering that I underlined some things and wrote down some comments that were addressed to you. I just want to get it out because we have people that work very hard on our ordinances with us. And I just want to make sure they understand what we're looking at too, that they may not have it. And because it's stressed to you, that's why I asked you up front. These projects are neither a utility or a community as defined by the county's latest solar ordinance, correct?
They fall outside of those definitions, correct.
Okay. The projects
it isn't located in a service territory of a utility scale because the power was not going to be sold to the power grid.
Correct.
Correct? Okay. These projects are being developed as a partnership with Delaware Co-op. So it's a partnership with a business that's their only purpose is to help their costs to their consumers of what they provide to. It's not going onto a grid outside our states for us here.
That's what they've testified to, yes.
And then finally, because it's coming before us this way too, they don't have to follow the Public Service Commission because it's not under their purview.
The co-op is not under the purview of the PSA.
I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that helped us. That's why we're having this issue up front here. So, but I still want to say that a little buffer is better than nothing, because one thing for sure is the roots of a tree is going to help erosion too for water runoff or whatever. It also helps in whatever, however the soil is going to be tested later on. So I just wanted to bring that up. Thank you.
Mr. Hall.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to play devil's advocate just for a minute. The land will be leased, correct?
Correct.
With the idea that once the solar panels reach the end of their life, they can be taken down and disposed of by, per the application. So what I'm thinking is, what won't come down is all the trees. So what is now one big contiguous farm parcel, when the solar panels come down at the end, we're going to have this configuration of trees that will be, if they wanted to truly restore it to farmland, all of that would have to be chopped down and removed. So anyway, I'm saying that because as we review more and more of these, I'm not convinced that these are the eyesore that requires. Now, our policy says we got to have it. So I'm just putting it out there that it is expensive. It is more permanent than the thing that it is screening, because that is supposed to be a temporary use. So I'm not sold actually on the need for these, but I just want to throw that out there.
Any more questions, or can we let him proceed with his testimony? Go ahead and proceed.
Thank you. And then this is just the last slide, which it gets to the decommissioning portion. It's operational for 25 to 35 years. At that point, it may be decommissioned. And just wanted to point out that the removal is paid completely by the project and not by the county nor the landowner. In fact, it's already written in the option to lease agreement that we have with the landowner that the project be decommissioned at its completion of use. And then finally, again, in accordance with the solar ordinance, we will be submitting a decommissioning plan and financial assurance prior to the final site plan approval. And that's it for the presentation for American Holly.
Okay, Commissioner Angel has a question.
Yep.
How much is it going to cost to do decommissioning and removal by the project? Do you have budget for it?
It really depends on the size of the project and the methods. So bullet number 3 kind of alludes a little bit to that. So there is actually a significant amount of salvage value and recyclable value of the materials and the panels at the end of the life. So for example, the solar panels oftentimes are resold or donated to developing countries because they still have usable life left in them. So there's value associated
But that's
with
resale. I'm talking about decommissioning and removal, though. You mean it costs to put it down,
right.
So there should be a cost for removal, not reselling.
Right. Yeah. The only reason I bring that up is because it depends on the methods at which you do decommission. So I don't have a number ready for you, but it's something that we'd work with our engineers to come up with. And as I mentioned, that'll be in our decommissioning plan and our financial assurance bond that we post with the county.
What is that bond?
Just a typical decommissioning bond. Again, I don't have a number, unfortunately, offhand ready, but typically for this size of project, around $100,000 approximately.
And how much is it for the project to be put in?
I don't have a number off the top of my head for that, unfortunately. I don't know if anyone from...
I mean, again, these projects, the costs are changing every day, but I can say that I just received a decommissioning plan for a project, a similar size project in Virginia, and the actual salvage value of all the materials was $150,000 over what the project, what the actual cost of the materials was, because the prices of the commodities are going up and down over the past years, so crazy. I mean, you could sell one of these projects now in a year with the way that commodities are escalating for more than what you're putting them in the ground for.
I understand how the fluctuation is happening, but you have to have a dollar amount in order to purchase to do what you want to do.
Correct, and as part of one of the conditions of the Planning Commission's approval was a decommissioning plan. So we hired third-party engineers to produce those. So we don't have those figures at this time. It varies from state to state, location, project to project. But this is somewhere between $100,000, couple $100,000. We just don't know at this point because we haven't done the study yet.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Are you finished with your testimony on the American Holly Solar Farm?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we'll ask anyone else in the audience that is in favor of this application, CS 2204, to please come forward. Anyone else that wants to offer testimony in favor, please come forward. Anyone online, Mark?
If there's anyone joining us online at this time and you'd like to make comments in favor of this application, please raise your hand and we can let you into the meeting. See no hands raised at this time, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, we'll open up the floor for anyone in the audience that is opposed to application CS 22-04. Anyone opposed, please come forward and offer testimony as to why you're opposed.
Hi. Tricia Hurd Nash, 3652 Big Woods Road, Smyrna, Delaware, 19977.
Do you wish to swear or affirm?
Affirm, please.
Do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so you affirm?
I do. So I'm really not opposed to the project, but I'd like to shed some light on a few things. I was here for the RPC committee meeting about this specific project. There was a very passionate speech done by who I'm assuming was Mrs. Mailing. I'm sure you guys can get the notes from that meeting or get the recording from that meeting. And she actually owns the adjacent trees. It was brought up in that RPC hearing that they want to not put the buffer up because there are already trees there. And she brought up the fact that she actually owns those trees, that they are hers, and that she would like additional trees put up to buffer her property from this project. And this entire tree issue was brought up at that point. It was also mentioned at that point that the farmer doesn't want to put the trees in place because it will impede the agricultural land and what he can actually farm. Well, if the farmer was worried about the land that he was actually going to farm, he wouldn't be putting in solar, he would be farming. So there's two issues. So I urge you, before you vote tonight, maybe go back and, if you can, look at the notes from that RPC hearing, because she was really passionate. I actually felt sorry for her. It's the only reason I'm up here right now. I actually had notes about her. She came to me afterwards, asked if I could speak to her. She didn't feel she had been properly notified. I advised her to speak to Ms. Kiefer about that, or someone on Levy Court about that. I don't know where that went. Can't testify to that. But the easement for the trees, I'm pretty sure they know that they're not getting an easement from her. It would be like asking me for one, and you all know how that would go. So that's my theory on that. The other thing that I'd like to mention is we've been dealing with these projects and we've been talking about leasing the land, returning it to ag use. Tonight we heard that Delaware Electric Co-op has the right to purchase the project, or they hope to. They have that written in. How does that affect the contract? How does that affect the lease with the property owner? How does that affect what the county agrees to? I think that brings up a question that you guys need to ask yourselves. Another point, they're gonna mow it twice a year. Do any of you mow your yards twice a year? Do any of you wanna live next to something that gets mowed twice a year? Farmers mow their hedgerows every month. You don't mow twice a year and have something that you wanna look at. Unless grass doesn't grow, because in a solar field it's so hot and the reflection causes the weeds to not grow, and then maybe you do only have to mow twice a year. That's a concern. You know, I don't think that we're asking for a lot when we're asking for 2 rows of trees as a buffer. I think that you guys did hit on a key point. Even if there's not a house in that land currently, someone could purchase that land down the road, and it should not be their problem to buffer their property from a solar project that is receiving funding and that this county is approving and that people are making money off of. If they were not making money, they would not be doing these projects. It should not be the future landowner's problem to create the buffer. That's why the ordinances were put in place. That's why we've worked on this. So I'm not standing here to tell you I'm opposed to this project. I'm standing here to caution you that there was testimony given at the RPC hearing. And it was kind of presented the same way. It's kind of a fluster because they did all 3 projects at one time and it kind of got a little confusing, but I'm pretty sure that I'm right, and this is the project. The lady has horses, the back of her property. She goes out at night. She was concerned about the noise. She was concerned about the buffer. So I just wanted to mention that since I was sitting here and she's not. So if anybody has any questions or...
Any questions?
Yeah?
What was the lady's name again?
I believe it's Mrs. Melling.
Melling.
But I'm not
Because
positive.
I
I'm not
read the
positive
testimony.
about that. So if you read, so Sarah someone should have it. She gave, yeah, you guys should have it. She gave a
So this
pretty
is the-
long speech about her property buffer.
And we are here talking about.
Unless I'm on the wrong project, but I don't think.
We're on
I am.
American?
That they have. Okay, good. Sarah, I'm glad I'm not crazy, but I thought, I didn't think I was wrong here.
Mr. Buxton.
Yeah.
It was Juanita Melling. Her testimony was about magnetic fields and light coming off the project, not anything about a buffer.
No, she did speak about the buffer.
I just read it. She did. She currently has about an 80-foot buffer at the back of her property with the tree line, and that tree line is on a blue line stream, so chances are there's trees aren't going anywhere.
She definitely brought up the buffer. She definitely mentioned to the solar company that she owned the trees that were on her property and that she would want an additional buffer. Now, I can't tell you what's in your record, but I didn't make it up, and I sat in that meeting and heard it.
I did
Oh, no, I'm not debating it. I'm just saying.
the name because I did read the to me, and you're right. We don't get all the words in text. I don't believe it is. It's not saying it didn't occur. It doesn't say it's not valuable at all. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Paul Cartanza Sr., 6289 Bayside Drive, Dover, Delaware, 19901.
Sir, do you wish to swear or affirm?
I swear.
Do you solemnly swear upon the Holy Bible that the testimony you give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
That's all I can do. We've made an ordinance. We've come up with the 2 rows of trees. There's no use in backpedaling now. They know this. They're trying to sniggle out of some trees that's going to run their cost up. Well, your cost is going to go up anyway because it's farmland. There's more farmland being taken out of production. So costs are costs. It is what it is. We made the ordinance. We've sat here through many meetings with Buxton and Maston and Angel trying to resolve these little issues to make it fair for everybody. Trees is a buffer. I don't care if the neighbor's living there or the neighbor will never live there. In 30 years, half of us won't even be here. So how are we going to sit there and point fingers? Well, you said, he said, we said. These guys are going to be retired. They're not going to be sitting around here worrying about the solar in 30 years or what it's going to cost them to dismantle it. That's in the future. Nobody knows the future, only God. But like I said, we have tried to make this simple. If they want these solar projects in, they're going to have to buffer them. I can see not making them put sidewalks in if there's nobody out there but the deer and the antelope. They don't need no sidewalk, but there's certain waivers I can say, yes, I agree on. But as far as the trees need to go in. We're not asking for 5 rows, they're only asking for 2. So let's please stick to our guns, stick to what we've tried to do, tried to work with people and move forward on this. I'm not opposed to the man trying to make a little extra money, but the deal is the deal. Any questions?
Any questions, Mr. Cartanza?
Yeah. It's just a conversation, that's all it is. It's an opportunity for them to come to a public hearing and make a request, and then us to have a conversation about a suggestion, and then listen to testimony and decide what we want to do. There was no consideration given for not requiring a buffering, right? A buffering shall be a part of this project. It was just a recognition that we have an existing one, and if we can utilize it and not be hostile, it is what it is. But that's all it was, just a conversation. I don't think that it's a walking away of anything. I do think that, when you ask for a waiver, there's a conversation to be had. If at the end that waiver isn't granted, it's all good. At the end of the day, if it's, as I said when I made my conversation about if you can't record it, it's the cost of doing business. Because what we cannot have is an unbuffered solar farm, because we've made that decision. We're just not going to have it. So that's all. That's all.
Okay, well, I totally understand that it's a discussion, but it's a discussion that rubs us the wrong way on the opposite side. It's in black and white on paper that we need the buffers. Thank you.
I agree with that. We definitely need buffers.
Anyone else opposed to CS 2204? Anyone else opposed, please come forward. Please state your name and address, be sworn or affirmed.
Sylvia Oak, 6348 Burnite Mill Road, Felton, Delaware. Affirm.
Do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so you affirm?
I do. I was here also at the September 1st RPC, and my neighbor was the lady who was definitely not interested in having her trees count towards the buffer, separating her from the panels. She had also asked about the noise, which Mr. Tam had explained would not be an issue at night, but the DEC fellow showed that the decibels were going to be about 60 which they were trying to explain off as the sound of a refrigerator, which is louder than my lawnmower. So that's the buzzing when the day is on and the panels are doing their thing. I think the noise is coming from the inverter? Transformer. Okay, so it was coming from the transformer. So there were definitely issues, not necessarily just a conversation, but an issue that this woman was talking about going out into her yard with her horses, with her pets, sitting out during the day, during the night, not having an issue at night because apparently the noise wasn't going to be an issue at night, but during the day was going to be an issue because of not just the trees, but the noise also that came with the project. That's one thing I wanted to mention. There was a slide that was the Century Engineering slide that made it seem like the project was nowhere near that eastern buffer. This is the slide that was the one I was familiar with that shows the panels all the way through to the property line. I'm one of the abutting neighbors to Parnell's property, but I'm not in these, I'm not right abutting the property, but I'm close enough to hear 60 decibels. I could hear when my neighbors are cutting their grass, so I'm near enough to hear the noise. Mr. Tam's colleague had mentioned during the RPC also that the blue, which is the, they called it the fixed non-agricultural fencing, would not be 8 to 10 feet, which was what was originally suggested, but would be 7 feet? 7 feet, only 7 feet. So right there, we're not doing the 8 to 10 feet. We're already cutting it down to 7 feet of that non-ag, which is the lightweight stuff. But I really, my point is, would really appreciate you considering not approving the third waiver request, mostly because of the noise and the fact that, yes, there are trees there now on the other side. There are trees right now between me and this project, plenty of them, 30 years. I would, for neighborly purposes, being in Felton, I'd rather see that my neighbor not be scared off of her property because her calm, farm-friendly lot now becomes a buzzing during the day, all the time. And a 20-foot buffer doesn't really, I mean, sounds like a lot. They're talking about not having the budget to add these secondary requests, yet they can't give you a number for what the budget is right now for installing the project that they're going to decommission in 25 to 35 years when I'll hopefully still be here, but the company might not even exist anymore. So the whole idea of, oh, we'll do it in 10 years if it's necessary, if the next tenant or next owner wants to be there, seems absurd when companies don't even last 25 years anymore without announcing it as a big deal. So I'd really rather that you not a request the three. This number 3 is the one I have a problem with. So that's it. Are there any questions? Do you have any questions for me?
Questions?
Questions?
Conversations? Don't see any, ma'am. Thank you very much for coming tonight.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else here opposed to application CS 2204?
I'm Kevin Goldsboro. I reside at 668 Lighthouse Road, Smyrna, Delaware, 19977.
Do you solemnly swear upon the Holy Bible that the testimony you give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I swear. Okay.
Good, proceed.
So definitely at least a few areas that I oppose with this. But something I haven't brought up before any time here is how I oppose this, and in general, with it being taxpayer funded, all these solar projects, it's not the free market system. We've seen a lot of developments past 20 years, just since the time I was a child, just so much Smyrna area being developed. And I think a lot of us accepted it to some extent because it was more the free market system with these companies that have 60 to 70% government subsidies oftentimes, and I do not think it could survive in the free market system. So this is ag conservation, and the taxpayers have in fact invested for it to stay ag lands, and we are willing. We want it to be agriculture. Yes, aesthetics are nice, but just it's a productive lifestyle in the community that we have, and just don't want to see that go away. So as far as costs, the cost of the project, I know the project, I know this is about a tenth of the, each of these projects are about a tenth of the size of the one that we've been facing in Smyrna, but I understand that that project's close to $100 million, so I can't imagine, with it costing that much, that the energy rates would go down any. These fields all near the coastline, near the marshes, offer a lot for wetlands. I see, there's 2 ponds right next where they want to put these solar panels, and I know you wouldn't see that many waterfowl use those ponds if the fields didn't offer anything in the way of food or habitat. They also wouldn't provide food for the people of this state, and we'll continue to see food costs go up. As far as screening, I think if you got to hide something, there must be something bad with it. With the renewable energy mandate of the governor, I don't think that should be any pressure in dismissing or not thoroughly investigating guidelines. Oh, we met this 40% renewable law, but laws A, B, and C were overlooked. Okay? I feel like to follow one law, you might have to break a few. As far as disposal, the LA Times a couple months ago came out with an article. California, they're usually a few years ahead of us and doing this kind of thing, and so they're a few years ahead of us in seeing the issues from these panels. They had a number of experts say that only 10% of the panels could reasonably be expected to ever be recycled. And Delaware we only have so much land. You take 25 acres here, 75 acres here. It eventually is going to affect all the wetlands and how much ag production is done in this state. So, any questions of me?
Any questions, Mr. Goldsboro? Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Anyone else here in opposition? Anyone else in opposition that has any testimony that's any different? Anyone else in opposition? Any questions from the commissioners before I close the public hearing? Jody.
Ms. Kiefer?
Yes.
So I'm really trying to come to grips with the 80-foot of buffer that is existing on the two parcels to the east. And the fact that Ms. Melling has a horse farm there. She has a horse pen at the back of that property, so she's very unlikely going to take out the trees, which will expose anything that she can see into the solar farm anyway. Whether Mr. Glisson develops his property, which is 27 acres, most of it wooded, is questionable. But my question of you is thinking creatively. I know it's tough. How can we satisfy the two owners on that side of the property with the land and the buffer, the vegetation buffer that's there, and Mr. Maturan's concern about cost?
The one parcel in question that's actually developed, the applicant has, and you'll see on the screen, has submitted that they will include a buffer along that property line. The undeveloped parcels where the applicant has suggested they would prefer not to install a buffer, it comes down to how much of a priority this is for the Levy Court based on the testimony you've heard before you. There is still the option of trying to secure an easement to ensure that there are at least 2 rows worth of trees preserved.
So hold on a minute. So Mrs. Melling wants the buffer and Mr. Glisson does not?
Mrs. Melling, who was at the hearing,
right,
that buffer question came up, and the applicant is proposing to install a buffer
So
along that property
260
line.
feet or so.
Along her property line.
Okay.
The balance of it, it's a question for the Levy Court. Is it a priority to require the buffer? And we're talking about, just to be clear, we're talking about 2 different things. The waiver that's up on the screen is from Chapter 187 that is associated with any land development plan. That is a waiver Planning Commission recommended granting. But in lieu of providing what 187 requires, that instead the applicant provide the 2 rows of trees along the perimeter.
Even along that border?
That was Planning Commission's recommendation because it's in keeping with the solar ordinance that the Levy Court adopted in March.
So then why not all the way around on the southern border?
Planning Commission recommended the entire perimeter just as required in the ordinance adopted in March.
Reading over something here might pertain here. It says staff recommends approval of the waiver from subsection 187-79A, but also that the applicant provide 2 rows of trees on the subject line. All right, now is that what we're talking about here?
That is exactly what we're talking about.
And what do you mean by subject line?
Along the perimeter of the project.
The entire property?
As would be required by the ordinance adopted in March, yes.
So I don't understand the confusion. It's in the measure right here. Am I missing something? I'm ready to make a motion. If you
No, we're not ready yet. We're not ready yet.
If I could, the question for Levy Court is, number 1, should that waiver be granted from Chapter 187? If yes, fine. If the answer is yes, that should be granted, the follow-up question is, should buffering be augmented along the perimeter of the project? Yes or no? If yes, what form should that take? If that helps clarify what's actually before you.
I would add that a lot of people worked long and hard on this ordinance. And don't forget, we've got a lot of more of these community-type solar type fields coming before us. And if you waive something on this, mark my words, Every one of them that comes in here is going to ask for a similar waiver, and if we don't do it, they're going to litigate. Mark my words. So that will cost the county money, not those folks out there. So what I would say is, if we got the choice between us being litigated on this down the road, or those folks out there putting a buffer up, which we've already agreed that we can put smaller trees in that will grow, then I say let them put the trees in, not us. Not us have to worry about the litigation. So that's my thought. And like I said, we've got the ordinance. Let's let the ordinance work.
Say that if we're not going to entertain a conversation about a waiver request that involves some tough questions, and then at the end agree with what you said, then don't have waiver requests at all. Let's just ban them in their entirety. Because that's led us to where we are at this exact moment, which is there an opportunity to mitigate the issues? And if there is, let's hear them. And let's hear the testimony of the individuals that are opposed. After listening to the testimony, including the one that Ms. Nash presented that wasn't clearly articulated in the minutes, as well as the lady who spoke earlier, the conversations had, and I would not agree to any type of problem solving for you. You're just hung up. It is what it is. The ordinance is what it is. The bufferings are there for a reason, especially when you had the testimony we had tonight. It's what I said 15 minutes ago. It's the cost of doing business. It is what it is. So that's where I am. But I would argue that we at least should have these, when you have a waiver, you give it its diligence.
And I'm saying I'm not opposed to that. But what I'm saying is, what you've got to consider is, if you waive one, they're going to be followed by many more. So, if they can come up with a situation where there probably will be situations where it would be justified, but I don't think this is one of them. So,
don't disagree, and we're not even arguing about this. What I'm stating is that using that, then let's not enter, because if you're using that effectively, then the first waiver also is in play. You can no longer agree to waive a sidewalk and then require one. So that's all. I'm just a little frustrated because, and it's not with you, it's just with my own thought of just saying, hey, is there an option? That's all. Which I don't think the body should ever lose. Because I think at the end of the day, we're going to come to the right decision. So.
Any other comments before I close the hearing? Commissioner Ranger?
Yes, Mr. President. And what Mr. Buxton just said is something that I've heard repeatedly since I've been a sitting commissioner now. That I even brought it up when our county was doing things too, when we built the Boys and Girls Gym, and about costs and reducing costs, but that's the cost of doing business. Everybody has to do it. So with Ms. Nash and Mr. Cartanza bringing forth what they've helped us on our ordinance, and what you just said is exactly what we need to do. We do have a way of granting waivers, but in this case, it's not warranted, I feel. And if we can't do it this way, maybe we should table it and have them go back and talk to the people. If that's not doable, then we vote. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I close the public hearing on application CS 2204. Ask for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we approve CS 22-04, American Holly Solar Farm.
Are you going to address the waivers, Commissioner Howe, that they asked for?
The ones that are already listed in here, I thought got as close as we could come to the resolution. If somebody wants to add something, I have no objection. Joe, did you want to do anything? Okay.
There were 3 waivers.
grant waivers 1 and 2 and not 3.
Second.
Second. Right? Good. Commissioner Angel didn't hear the motion as far as which waivers you're 1 and 2, yes, the sidewalk and the...
And not 3.
Right. So basically your motion is to follow what the RPC recommended.
Basically, I'm willing to go along with amendments, like I said, 1 and 2 and not 3.
Not 3, because, Sarah, the RPC granted the waiver, did they not?
They granted the waiver for
Right.
number 3 from Chapter 187 with the condition that 2 rows of trees be installed along the perimeter.
Okay.
What you have written.
Right, do I need to start over again?
Go ahead.
Hey, make a motion where you approve CS 22-04, the American Holly Solar Farm with the applicant provides 2 rows of trees on the subject line as stated in the measure. And is that sufficient? All other conditions.
Second.
Okay, got a motion by Commissioner Howe, second by Commissioner Sweeney. Hate to ask, but anybody have any questions on the motion? Seeing none, can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Angel?
Yes, as per Commissioner Howe and the buffers that we put in place.
Mr. Buxton?
Yes, per reason stated.
Mr. Hall?
Yes, per staff and RPC recommendations.
Mr. Howell?
Yes, reason stated.
Mrs. Maston?
Yes, reason stated.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes, per the Regional Planning Committee, per staff recommendation, and a good faith effort by Levy Court to work with the applicant, and all the conditions that were following the original ordinances.
Mr. Pepper?
Yes, based on the summarization by Commissioner Sweeney.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 7 yeas.
Thank you. Roll call reveals application CS 2204 has been approved with the recommendations from Regional Planning. Okay. Item number 2, application CS 2205, Ladybug Solar.
Thank you, Mr. President. CS 2205 is another conditional use site plan for a public utility solar facility. Again, this is very similar to a community facility, but can't be processed as such because of the area it's located in. Pardon me. The site is just over 24 acres on the south side of Sudlersville Road, east of Downs Chapel, west of Kenton. It is zoned AR, agricultural residential. The Regional Planning Commission took testimony at their September 1st hearing, and at their September 8th business meeting, voted unanimously to recommend conditional approval, including a waiver from the sidewalk requirement as well as the tree planting waiver in favor of compliance with the recently adopted solar ordinances. And in this one, all of the required buffers actually reflected. So I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for Ms. Kiefer? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right, at this time, we will open the public hearing on application CS 2205, and I'll ask anyone in the audience that is in favor of this to please come forward, and we're going to minimize this down to what is different from the previous application. We don't have to do the preliminary stuff. but we will apply the preliminary information that was given on the last application to this one as well.
So I think, there we go. All right, so hello again, Jeff Matron, EDF Renewables. So will be the lead developer on the Ladybug Solar Project. The project is located off of Sudlerville Road in Clayton, Delaware. It's zoned agricultural residential. If you, oh, okay, great. Oh, shows this. Okay. All right, here we go. Project overview. So Ladybug is a 4 megawatt solar project. The project, we currently have the design to about 25 acres. We're going to be tying into the existing distribution infrastructure surrounding the property, ultimately ending up at the nearby Meredith substation. I guess we're going to be starting construction. If we get approved, we anticipate starting construction first half of 2023, ultimately going to COD in the end of the year. So next slide, please. Okay, here you can see the delineated wetland that we did for the project. As you can see in the image to the left, it shows the wetlands at the site. The image to the right shows our conceptual site plan, and in it you'll see that all wetlands were delineated, were setback buffered at minimum 100 feet, and we don't plan on disturbing and having any other environmental impacts of the project. So those are the primary, if you go to the next slide, please. This particular project, it is avoiding about 6,221 metric tons of carbon dioxide, which is the electrical consumption of about 1,200 homes. And that, again, is sequestering about 7,363 acres of the same carbon as 7,363 acres of trees. So, next slide, please. And as Sarah mentioned, we are applying for 2 waivers, both of which were approved at the Planning Commission. The first waiver was for Article 11, Section 18760A, a requirement to provide a sidewalk along an arterial roadway frontage of a property. The second, a waiver from Kent County Code Article 11, Section 18774D, a requirement to provide 1 tree per 3,000 square feet of site area for non-residential development. And again, next slide, please. And again, this project will be decommissioned. We're both required by our lease with the property owner to decommission it, and we are required by our approval from the Planning Commission to provide a decommissioning plan, which must be approved by planning staff prior to approval. So it will be decommissioned at the end of the life. So those are the primary characteristics of this particular project. Are there any questions?
Any questions? I don't see any.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, I asked anyone else in the audience who is in favor of application CS 2205 Ladybug Solar to please come forward in favor. Anyone in favor, please come forward. Anyone online?
If there's anyone joining us online that would like to speak in favor of this application, please raise your hand and we will let you into the room. See no hands raised at this time, Mr. President.
Thank you. Anyone in the audience opposed to application CS 2205? Anyone opposed, please come forward and offer testimony as to why.
Again, if there's anyone online that's would like to make testimony in opposition to this application, please raise your hand. No hands raised online at this time, Mr. President.
Okay, we have someone in-house here coming forward.
I oppose this project because of, there again, the trees around the buffer. Or again, property could be sold in 10 years around it. And if there's no buffer, then that person will be looking in the backyard of this solar project. I only seen the trees. If they go back to the footage, it only shows trees up and around that far. Yes, there's woods around there, but there again, if someone buys it and tries to develop it, the trees aren't there to protect it. If I'm not mistaken, am I wrong? Is the trees not all the way around?
There are trees on the property.
There's trees on the property, but they're again stating 5, 10, 20 years, 30 years, the property could change hands 10 times and be redeveloped. That's the only thing that I have to say.
Any questions? Mr. Buxton.
Mr. Cartanza, Ms. Kiefer, does it meet the current ordinance?
The trees are actually on the subject site, and when that's the case, we count them toward the buffer, even if it's not right on the perimeter of the development. It's on the property controlled by the property owner.
I agree to disagree, but there again, buffers were put in our ordinance. Thank you.
Mr. Kiefer, the difference between this one and the other one, the property surrounding the other application did not belong to the subject property.
Correct.
So how do we keep that existing wooded land in place? What ensures that?
And effectively, the existing woods being counted toward the buffer are part of the condition. They have to stay.
That's
and they're
part of
under the
condition.
control.
Okay.
They are part of the condition, and they are under the control of the property owner.
I missed that then, yeah. Mr. Angel.
Ms. Kiefer, I know we're talking about buffers again, but in here, I don't know if this is a true buffer, but it's something that wasn't in the last one, and that's a security fence around the property. That's actually in here, but it's not up there as a waiver. So I know that's an added expense for fencing. So is that part of the waiver that didn't make it up there?
No, I believe there's fencing around all three projects. Yeah, there's fencing around all of them.
Then I missed it on the last one. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Buxton.
Now we're nitpicking just a little. This levy court was pretty serious about following the ordinances adopted. And I get it, and I agree, right? So we are here now in this second one, and we are still, regardless of, in fairness to Mr. Cartanza, I need to make sure we are following the ordinance as adopted. And in tradition, you're using the trees that exist, and that's not stepping away from the ordinance. That's kind of using the ordinance effectively, or what is that?
It certainly is not an unusual interpretation. When we're looking at a development plan that requires a buffer, if there are existing trees on the subject site, those can count. That's typical.
I agree to disagree again because, as I say, these properties can change hands in the next 5, 10, 60 days. And if the man comes in and takes out the trees that you're hoping that will be there in the next 35 years, I think you're going to be highly mistaken.
Agree. Is that because they're a buffer, correct? So in using that argument, you're fair. If they planted true rows of trees and they grew up and the ownership changed hands, you couldn't take them out.
But the solar farm's going to be there for 25 or 35 years. So there again, that's a totally different set of circumstances. We're trying to buffer that farm from the other properties adjoining it. And if you take out, the person comes in and buys it, timbers those lots, it's wide open. That's all I'm saying is that we.
But Ms. Kiefer, that row of trees, at least some of those, would be under the same restrictions as if they were planted, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So, and because it's under one owner, if it changes hands, any new owner is subject to the same restrictions on them. And if by chance they got cut down, we'd require they be replaced.
So is that being stated in the rest of the terminology of the other two? What I'm saying is the other two, or the first one, American,
Yes.
there again had trees. And if they get cut down, are they going to plant the trees to protect the solar panels?
Yes, as would be true with any application, whether it's these two or the others that have come before us, or the ones after us. Or I don't care if it was solar, whatever it might be. If there's a buffering requirement that has to be maintained, then they're going to be held
Okay,
accountable.
but I don't see it written in any of the ordinances that we have created.
We're gonna
Okay,
say-
I'm
we're
just
gonna-
trying to make
We're going to talk about it
sure.
at the end, maybe at the end of this meeting, we can definitely clarify that for you, if that's okay.
But do you understand what I'm getting
Sure.
at?
Yeah.
If they're cleared, you got 3/4 of that thing showing. That's all. I'm just trying to keep it out there. Thank you.
Just having a discussion.
Any other questions? So, Ms. Kiefer, I'm just to verify. The part of that does not have to have vegetation planted around it is covered by trees that the owner of the current open land where the panels are going to go, he or she owns that property also.
Correct.
Okay. And it'd be part of this plan that have we indicated how wide of a buffer has to be left of trees if some of those other trees have to be cut down or cut down in the future?
2 rows. 2 rows of trees. Existing buffer can count toward it. One of the recommendations of approval that the Planning Commission is recommending is that the perimeter be surrounded by 2 rows of trees. Existing trees on the property can count toward that.
Okay.
If for whatever reason trees get cut down and it no longer has those 2 rows of trees, they're out of compliance with their approval. And at that point, they either get compliant or they risk losing their approval altogether. That is a statement in the conditions. If you're not compliant, we can revoke your permit.
Gotcha. Any questions on that? Commissioner Ranger?
Just a quick one on the waiver request for the 3,000 square foot on the last one, it was, I think, 1,800 and something square feet, wasn't it, per tree? So this one's got a wider stance from what's being planted?
I think we're conflating things. The code requirement outside of the growth zone is 1 tree per 3,000 square feet of development. So what the Planning Commission has recommended is waiving that requirement that's out of Chapter 187 and instead imposing the 2 rows of trees along the perimeter to screen.
Any other questions? Any other commissioner questions or comments before I close this? Seeing no further comments, I'll close application CS 22-05 Ladybug Solar, and I'll turn the motion over to Commissioner Howe.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we approve CS 22-05 Ladybug Solar.
You need to mention something about the regional planning's waivers.
And the waivers that are contained therein.
Second.
So you're agreeing with the regional planning commissions? Yes. That's part of your motion? And a second? Okay. Commissioner Howell made the motion to approve. Commissioner Masson second on CS 2205. Any questions on the motion? Ms. Tanaka, can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Angel?
I'm still thinking on this one. Come back to me before Mr. Pepper, please.
Mr. Buxton?
Yes, based on the unanimous approval by the Regional Planning Commission, the public testimony received, including Exhibit A and Exhibit B found in your packets, and the findings of facts listed on page 1 and 2. My vote is yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes, based on staff and RPC recommendations.
Mr. Howell?
Yes, reasons stated.
Mrs. Maston?
Yes, reasons stated by the RPC and staff.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes, per recommendation of the RPC, per recommendation of staff, the approval of the 2 waivers and the fact that our ordinances are working.
Mr. Angel?
Yes, reason stated.
Mr. Pepper?
Yes, reason stated.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 7 yeas.
Thank you. Roll call reveals application CS 2205 Ladybug Solar has been approved. Move on to the next application, application CS 2206 Gray Fox Solar Farm.
Thank you. Application CS 2206 is another public utility use for effectively community-sized solar. It's just under 22 acres on the northwest side of Brownsville Road, west of Harrington. It is zoned AR, agricultural residential. The Regional Planning Commission took testimony at their September 1st hearing, and at their September 8th business meeting, voted unanimously to recommend conditional approval, including again waiving the tree planting requirement in Chapter 187 in favor of requiring the 2 rows of trees act as a buffer. So again, this comes with a recommendation for approval. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for Mr. Kiefer? Seeing none, thank you. Okay, application CS 2206. I'll ask anyone in the audience in favor of this to please come forward and support your testimony as to why.
Next slide, please. All right, so this is Gray Fox. This is located in agricultural residential, just west of Harrington. And this is the site plan, the preliminary site plan, again, 4 megawatts in size. This is the same size as the other projects in terms of electricity generation or capacity, located on Brownsville Road in Harrington, Delaware. This one's approximately 22 acres in size, similar to the other projects, also connects to that local Delaware Electric distribution line, so the power is consumed locally. And has a similar construction timeline as the other 2 to start in 2023 and hopefully completing and reaching commercial operation by the end of 2023. And as you can see in the image on the right, it's the same equipment as the last project. This one is surrounded by woods and wetland scrub shrub throughout all of the sides except for along the road frontage, which I'll talk about in a few slides. Again, this is, wetland delineation was done. Pretty much all of the existing vegetation on site is delineated as a wetland surrounding the site, and we are still set back 100 feet from all wetlands, so complying with that, and again, not proposing to cut down any trees. Similar to the other projects, this provides a lot of environmental benefits, so the pollution-free electricity offsets the about 6,000 metric tons of CO2 that would normally have been generated from traditional sources. And that's equivalent to about 1,200 homes' electricity consumption and the carbon sequestered by over 7,000 acres of U.S. forests. And then this is the waiver request to provide 1 tree per 3,000 square feet, similar to the others. Again, we're maintaining all the existing vegetation, which is approximately 57 acres. We're proposing to plant the vegetative buffer along the naturally unbuffered area on the parcel, and that is made up of 108 trees in accordance with the solar ordinance. That's the 2 rows 20 feet apart of evergreen trees offset by 10 feet. And finally, the decommissioning and removal, similar to the other projects. We will be developing a decommissioning plan and a financial assurance to be approved by Kent County staff prior to final site plan approval. And with that, any questions?
Any questions? Same as the last, the forested area, it's all owned by this same property owner. And can you back up slides if you, right there? On the left side of the screen there, it looks like a road runs through there. Is that buffered already with trees, or what is that? Right there, yeah. Move there to the left side of the screen. The other left, yeah. There you go.
There's actually a tax ditch that runs.
That's a tax ditch?
Runs along the western side of the parcel.
Okay, that's a tax ditch. I didn't know if that was a road, gravel road, or what it was, but that is a tax ditch, and it's forested as well on both sides, right? Okay. Any other questions? Any other questions? So, Ms. Kiefer, this is pretty much the same recommendations as the last one per the regional planning.
It is identical with the exception of the sidewalk waiver that's not required in this case.
Okay, any questions? Seeing none, Commissioner Howe, turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we approve CS 22-06 Gray Fox Solar Farm. Mention waivers.
As recommended by regional planning?
Yes.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Howe, second by Commissioner Sweeney to approve. Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Angel?
Yes, reason stated by Commissioner Howell.
Mr. Buxton?
Yes, for reasons stated.
Mr. Hall?
Yes, per staff and RPC recommendations.
Mr. Howell?
Yes, for a whole bunch of reasons.
Mrs. Maston?
Yes, reason stated.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes, for reasons stated.
Mr. Pepper?
Yes, reason stated by Regional Planning Commission and staff.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 7 yeas.
Thank you. Roll call reveals application CS 2206 Gray Fox Solar Farm has been approved by Levy Court. Moving on, we have some Kent County ordinances to consider here. Mrs. Maston, Mr. Angel, and Ms. Kiefer.
Thank you. The first ordinance before you is LC 2216. This deals with the definition for community solar facilities. Right now, the definition references the Public Service Commission, which is why the past 3 applications had to go through conditional use rather than administrative approval. So instead, what the amendment calls for is eliminating the reference to the PSC and instead relying on the size of the project, the agreed upon 50 acres as a maximum. So that's all it does. It simply revises the definition of community solar. Regional Planning Commission at their September 8th business meeting voted unanimously to recommend approval. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Pretty much that's straightforward, right?
That's exactly what it does.
All right. Mrs. Maston, Mr. Angel.
I make a motion that in regards to ordinance LC 22-16 for community solar, that we remove the terminology.
Yes, we do need public hearing on this. This is a ordinance. So, with that being said, let's open the public hearing on this. Night's getting long, folks. Open a public hearing on ordinance LC 22-16, community solar definition, and ask anyone here that is in favor of this to please come forward. Anyone in favor, please come forward.
Do I need to be affirmed again? Tricia Hurd Nash, 3652 Big Woods Road, Smyrna, Delaware, 19977. I'm in favor because of what we just went through. The last 3 applications, if this definition was in place, if I'm correct, we would not have had to go through the list of waivers that do not actually apply to community solar. Am I correct? Is that what this is for?
Yes.
Good. Okay. Then I'm in favor of this definition change.
Doesn't eliminate the opportunity to seek a waiver.
No.
And we can identify in the next ordinance, if you choose, accepted on buffering requirements. We can include that in the next round if you want to. That's up to these guys, but we can add that. So, I mean, it speaks to your concern that my argument tonight was, well, there's 3 requests, so we're gonna talk about each one. But if you don't want us, and that's fair, to not be able to talk or consider the 3rd one, then we just need to articulate that in the ordinance, that there is no, it is what it is. It shall be 2 rows required regardless of whatever.
Well, I agree with that, but that's for you. But I mean, as far as this, if I just wanted to make sure I was understanding it correctly, that this definition, this ordinance is going through to change the definition so that what we just went through with these past 3 applications for Delaware Electric Co-op doesn't have to go through that process again. They can come in under the community solar ordinance that's already in effect. And I do agree with Commissioner Senator Buxton that we should not be giving waivers from the original ordinance. A lot of time, a lot of thought, and a lot of negotiation and a lot of compromise went into that ordinance. We were at 5 rows of trees at one point. We were at 30 acres for community solar at one point. We gave a lot on that ordinance. So I feel like it is fair to say the ordinance is the ordinance. 2 rows of trees has been agreed upon, like it or not. And, you know, the existing trees, I understand. If you noticed, I didn't come up. I understand the thought behind the existing trees. I will say that I think we need to be careful of if people subdivide properties, if you have a 100-acre field and you're putting in 28 of solar and you go in and you subdivide later on and they clear out that woods to put a house in for a family member even. You need to be careful of allowing the existing trees to count towards the requirement for the ordinance. I feel like they should put them in, honestly, but that's for you all to talk about and vote on. I just wanted to clarify that this is what this is for, so everyone in the room understood that had this definition been changed prior to, we wouldn't have seen the waivers for the sidewalks and the other things. This would have gone through under community solar. So, any questions?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Trees, remember that. Trees protect. I'm in favor of this ordinance. As Trish stated, there's no use in me in repeating it, but I did repeat trees. Thank you.
Anyone else in favor? Anyone else in favor? Mark, do we have anyone online?
If there's anyone that would like to speak in favor of this ordinance, please raise your hand at this time. I see no hands raised, Mr. President.
Thank you. At this time, anyone opposed? Anyone opposed? please come forward. Anyone opposed? Anyone online, Mark?
Again, if there's anyone that would like to speak in opposition of this ordinance, please raise your electronic hand, and then we'll let you into the meeting. Still no hands at this time, Mr. President.
All right, thank you. Any questions before I close the hearing? Seeing none, I close the public hearing on ordinance LC 22-16, community solar definition. And now I'll turn it over to Commissioner Maston.
I make a motion that we accept ordinance LC 2216, changing the community solar definition to amend Kent County Code Volume 2, Chapter 205 zoning as amended by revisions, Article 2 definitions, 205-6 definitions to, number 1, delete the reference to regulation by the PSC in the definition of community energy generating facility, and 2, add the maximum size of 50 acres.
Second the motion.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Maston, second by Commissioner Angel. Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, let's have a roll call, please.
Mr. Angel?
Yes, reason stated by Commissioner Maston.
Mr. Buxton?
Yes, reason stated.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maston?
Yes, reason stated.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Pepper?
Yes, all reasons stated. Thank you.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 7 yeas.
Thank you. Roll call reveals motion passed. At this time, we're going to move on to ordinance LC 22-12, solar facilities. Ms. Maston, Ms. Kiefer.
Mrs. Kiefer?
Thank you. Ordinance LC 2212 is an amendment to, again, the original solar ordinance adopted in March. It primarily does 4 things. One is it eliminates utility solar as a use within the AC and AR zoning districts entirely, inside or outside the growth zone. It also establishes a limit of 1 community facility per parcel, as parcels exist as of the day of adoption. The ordinance as written also calls for a limit to the total aggregate acreage for community solar in AC and AR to 1,600. You'll see as you review the Planning Commission recommendation, based on testimony they heard on September 1st, they are recommending an amendment that limits community solar to 800 acres in the AC zoning district, 800 acres in the AR, rather than an aggregate. And finally, the ordinance establishes an expiration date for the approval of community solar facilities. So effectively, they've got a time limit or time period within which they have to build. If they do not, they have to go through reapproval or at least another review to make sure they are compliant with whatever the current standards are at the time, which is similar to all of our land development applications. So as I said, this was considered by the Planning Commission at their September 1st hearing, and at their September 8th business meeting, they voted to recommend approval, again with the amendment I mentioned. There is no language in the ordinance with respect to waivers. Just a note, this is a zoning ordinance, so any change, any request to change from those conditions would be heard by the Board of Adjustment as opposed to the Planning Commission or the Levy Court, which is a public hearing process, so any neighbors would be notified. Again, this comes with a recommendation for approval. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Mr. Buxton.
Specific to number 5, which is the one I was going to add. So if I came up with an addition to this that said no waiver can be granted.
No variance.
No variance can be granted to the requirement for buffering within the solar property boundaries?
As long as the attorney doesn't have an objection to adding it, because it's not contemplated in the title. So as long as there's no objection to adding it now.
And I'm not saying we do add it, I'm saying if we discussed it, it would speak directly to what appears to be the court's desire not to entertain a waiver. We've adopted the ordinance. We need to stay steadfast to it. It doesn't eliminate the opportunity to use buffering on the existing property, but it no longer creates an option where an applicant can come in and ask the levy court to use an adjacent property for buffering. That's what we, I assume, look to do if you chose to.
There are a handful of other areas within the zoning ordinance where levy court has put into code that something may not be varied. So for those specific things, an applicant cannot go to the Board of Adjustment and ask for a variance. I don't know that there is a prohibition on doing that here. My only question would be if it were to be done tonight. It is not in the title of the ordinance, and I want to make sure that's not an issue. That's all.
So my explanation would be that if it wasn't noticed as a major change to the ordinance, it would have to be rescheduled.
Well, I'll be going, but I would say we deal with this tonight.
It can certainly be a follow-up amendment at another time if the levy court is interested, rather than adding it tonight.
Right.
That's an easy amendment to make.
That's the proper way to do it. Okay. Any questions from Ms. Kiefer? Thank you. This time we'll open a public hearing on this ordinance LC 22-12, solar facilities, and I'll ask anyone in the audience in favor of this ordinance to please come forward and offer testimony as to why you're in favor.
Trees. Just a little humor. Some of you aren't humorous, but hey, oh well. I'm in favor of this. It's been a long time. We had to have a little laugh, but I appreciate y'all's patience and listening because it is a serious matter to us. It is very serious. I mean, we all have our little pet peeves. We all have our little jabs, but when you come to this kind of situation where you're trying to protect land, you're trying to do the right thing, you're trying to give people power, I mean, it's all around us. But some of you, I apologize if I kind of ticked you off, but sorry. But I am in favor of this. We need to carry it on, and I hope somebody took notes from the man that's leaving, so we can revisit it at another time, but I'm in favor. Any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Cartanza? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else in favor of this ordinance, please come forward. Anyone else in favor? Welcome, sir. Please give us your name and address.
Pardon me? Yes, I'm doing that. My name is Stephen DeBellis, 120 Checker Crossing, Dover, Delaware, 19904.
I'm sorry.
I have a point.
What did you say your last name was?
You have to be sworn or affirmed first, please.
Pardon me?
You have to be sworn or affirmed first by our attorney.
Affirm?
All right, sir. Do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so you affirm?
I do. I have a
Sir,
point.
could I get your name again?
Stephen DeBellis.
Could you spell your last name?
Capital D-E, space, capital B-E-L-L-I-S.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. It's a point of information. I've been listening intently here. And Mr. Howell, early in the evening, you mentioned that you were not for solar, but you were for property rights.
No, I didn't. I said I was going to vote for the legislation, but not because I'm for
Right.
solar energy, but I'm thinking about private
Correct.
property rights.
I stand corrected. My point, my question is, those gentlemen that were here selling their solar projects were using other people's trees to get through the buffer. And my question is, what rights have you taken away from someone who owns that lot with those trees, who suddenly gets up tomorrow morning and decides he wants to sell it to a developer to put homes there?
Sir, I think I can answer that for you. The first application, they did not own, the property owner that was developing the solar farm did not own the surrounding trees. So we required them to put a buffer around that perimeter. On the second two applications, the property owner that was developing it owned all the wooded land around it. So we allowed them to use the same property owner's trees as a buffer. But he can't cut all those trees down without leaving a buffer around that, or the applicants will lose their permit. So that's the difference there.
In the third instance, though, they were using trees that were already there, weren't they, on the left side?
Yes, they were using trees that are already there.
So does the person who owns those trees, are they under restrictions now?
That's the same person that owns those trees that owns the property where the solar panels are going to go.
Okay.
All the way around except for the road frontage where we required them to put a buffer in.
Right.
That isn't there now. But the same property owner
Right.
owns all that land, owns the vacant, the open land where the solar panels are going to be, plus all those trees around it.
Okay.
So that's why we didn't require him or her to put buffer around that.
May I just add one thing to it?
Sure.
Say, for instance, in this case, those properties were owned by different people, not the same person. It's a hypothetical. Would those people would they be under a restriction so that they couldn't use their own land the way they wanted to?
No.
No?
No,
Okay.
the first that would be like the first property that we talked about. Like I said, the trees around that, existing trees, do not belong to the people that own the farmland.
Right.
So they're going to be required to put a buffer around that facility because they don't, and we argued that tonight, we discussed that tonight, whether we were going to allow them to use somebody else's trees as their buffer, and we didn't allow that. So we required them to put the buffer around.
Right. How old, one more question, how old is the ordinance that you're discussing where you said we just put a lot of time and effort into getting this ordinance passed and now we're making an exception to it? How long ago was that? I'm new to Delaware.
Welcome. But we're talking 18 months, 2 years.
18 months,
on this.
2 years, okay.
And, heavy discussions between property owners, farming community, business community, Levy Court commissioners. And so a lot of time was put into it. It wasn't done willy-nilly.
Right, no, I didn't, that wasn't the suggestion. I was just saying because I heard Mr. Buxton say a number of times that, we said one thing, why are we doing something else? And so that's what precipitated the question. I thank you for your time.
No problem.
And, I concur with the process you're using here. Okay, so I'm happy to see you giving it this much analysis and thought. Thank you.
Where are you from, sir? Sir, you said you're recently arrived here, moved here. Where'd you come from?
Well, we were originally, originally from Cape Cod, Massachusetts, but we took a hiatus of 5 years and went to the Southwest because we were told there was sun there. but no one told us that the sun would be 115 to 120 degrees. So we decided to come back to the Northeast.
But that was a dry heat, though, right?
Yeah. It doesn't matter how you melt.
Thank you, folks. Welcome to Kent County, Delaware.
As Miss Nash comes down, I can maybe better define when this whole thing started. It might have been a year ago today, and I think the Goldsboroughs can attest to it. But yeah, so literally we've been at this thing, and the solar issue presented itself rather abruptly in September of last year, and we worked hard through, I think, May maybe to adopt some ordinances, and then Commissioner Angel, Commissioner Maston, along with others, took the lead on creating what you see up there that we have today. So, and if I never hear another solar application, I will dance at anybody's wedding that has one.
We're going to transfer this over to the state so the state can make these decisions and you'll be able to lead it. Yeah.
And I'll still be calling you. Tricia, I heard Nash. I'm sure you all have me on record by now. I am in support of this ordinance. It's been a long, hard process with a lot of work, a ton of phone calls. I have a list, which I'm not going to bore you with by reading, of landowners that I've talked to and conferenced with and met with and gone over paperwork with. I just want to say that I appreciate the process. I appreciate you guys working with us. I appreciate the fact that you do care about Kent County and the character of Kent County and dealing with solar responsibly. This is not about not having solar. This is about having solar responsibly in Kent County, Delaware. And I think that land use issues need to be dealt with responsibly. That's what this is about for me. You know, we need agriculture in Delaware, and we are not going to have it if we don't put these ordinances in place. You know, I've been pretty vocal, but somehow or another I've managed to receive 2 solar offers in the last 2 weeks. So they're not going away. They're coming in. You know, we need to do this. I appreciate all of the work that you guys have done, all the phone calls that you've answered, all the questions that I've asked. I appreciate you putting up with me coming up here. I know everybody's tired of seeing me. I'm tired of doing this, but we need this ordinance to go through. If there are any questions I can answer for anybody that I know doesn't speak to me on a regular basis, I'm happy to do that from an agricultural perspective. I understand the landowner's rights argument. I get it, 100%. Wish that maybe in the 90s we'd had this conversation before the Ag Conservation District got put through. People disagree with me in the ag community on that, but I'm going to stand firm on my position that if we didn't have an Ag Conservation District that reduced the value of our land, we wouldn't be the target of these solar companies. So when you talk about land rights, be really careful who you talk about them with, because I feel that way about it. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I support this ordinance 100%. I think we need it. I think it's the right thing to do.
Any questions? I doubt if you have any, but thank you very much. We appreciate you. Anyone else in favor of this ordinance, please come forward. Anyone else? Anyone online?
Does anyone online that would like to make comments on this application, please raise your electronic hand and we'll let you in. See no hands raised at this time, Mr. President.
All right. Anyone in the audience that is opposed to this ordinance? Anyone in the audience that is opposed to this ordinance? Please come forward. Seeing no one, and one online.
Yep. Still no hands raised online at this time, Mr. President.
Thank you. Any questions from the commissioners before I close? Seeing none, we'll close this public hearing, and I'll turn this over to Mrs. Maston.
Well, I'd like to make a motion that we accept ordinance LC 22-12 for community solar, defining as follows. An ordinance to amend Chapter 205 of the Kent County Code 2:1, eliminate utility solar as a conditional use in the AC, agricultural conservation, and AR, agricultural residential zoning districts, regardless of located outside or within the growth zone overlay district. Number 2, establish a limit of 1 community energy generating facility per partial as the partial exists on the day of the ordinance adoption. Number 3, limit the total aggregate acreage dedicated to community solar energy facilities in the AC and AR zoning districts to 1,600 acres. Establish an expiration date for approved community solar energy facilities.
Second the motion.
Thank you, Commissioner. Motion by Commissioner Maston, second by Commissioner Angel. Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, can we have roll call, please?
Mr. Angel?
Yes, reasons stated by Ms. Kiefer, Ms. Maston, and the public.
Mr. Buxton?
Yes, for reasons stated, and clearly state that I appreciate the help of the folks in the audience whose guidance and support wouldn't have made it here without it. But yes, for reasons stated.
Mr. Hall?
I appreciate everybody's contributions to this. It's been a long road getting here. I will say, looking at the background information for this ordinance, one of my concerns was when you subtract out all of the setbacks, everything else, it comes to 160,000 acres that fall into AC and AR that would be able to do community solar. And when we say we're going to limit this to 1,600 acres, what we're saying is roughly 1%. We're limiting community solar to 1% of all the AC and AR parcels out there. So, but I don't have a better number. It just seems like we're really restricting this down to a very small number of parcels. And then once we approve a project, then the folks that get in the door first, these will be 20, 25-year projects. So the land will be gobbled up. Community solar projects will be approved, and then so there'll be a couple of winners and a whole lot of losers. And that will be in place for a very long time. But as I said, I don't have a better idea, and given all the work that went into this, I vote yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maston?
Yes, for reasons stated.
Mr. Sweeney?
My vote's no. In 1700s, the carbon dioxide was 270 parts per million in the air. In 1959, it was 316 parts per million. In 2019, it was 411 parts per million, and it's increasing at an even more increased rate. That impacts the greenhouse effect, which traps heat on the planet. And the 1900s average temperature, surface temperature, was 1.5 degrees less than it is now. The average 1800s average was 1.87 degrees less than it is now. And it's already causing more severe weather, more severe storms, heat waves, flooding, droughts that we've all seen. The Alaskan frozen tundra no longer exists. We've already seen higher sea levels. So Mr. Goldsboro, Mr. Cartanza, Ms. Nash, not your next generation, but the generation after that, better start looking to move inland. My vote's no.
Mr. Pepper?
My vote's yes. I think this will go a long way to keeping King County the way we wanted to keep it looking, keep the farmers in business. And I go back to something President Johnson said way back when he dedicated the national parkland down to Aztec Island. He said, we've got to leave some of this land looking like it was, not like it was when we got done with it. So I think that we have to, thank you, but I do believe that. And, we keep using it up. We use it up in a lot of different ways, whether it be houses, or factories, all that stuff we have to have to make our economy work. But we also need to protect our farmland and keep our areas looking pristine as possible. We promote Route 9 as a scenic byway, our Little Creek and Lipsick as our quaint villages, and then we turn around and want to do something and make it look industrial by putting solar farms all over it. There is a place for solar farms. I totally agree. I'm not against them, but I don't think they've done the right thing yet or have done it the right way. We need to look at these big box stores. We need to look at parking lots. We need to look at a lot of different things in order to utilize solar, but not take up our farmland. So thank you, folks. And like I said, my vote is yes.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 6 yeas, 1 nay.
Thank you. Ordinance LC 22-12 solar facilities has been approved by Levy Court. We'll close the public hearings, and there's no old business. We've got some new business. Commissioner Sweeney, you have an appointment?
Yep, thank you, sir. Tracy Miller was previously on the Kent County MPO a few years ago. She had to step away for personal reasons, and we currently have 3 vacancies on the Kent MPO, and Tracy has, her personal reasons have gone away and asked to be placed back, and in communications with the director of Kent MPO, they would welcome her back. So I move to appoint Tracy Miller to the Kent County MPO PAC.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Sweeney. I think Commissioner Hall seconded it first. And unless there's any questions, can we have a roll call, please, on the motion?
Mr. Angel?
Yes.
Mr. Buxton?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maston?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Pepper?
Yes.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 7 yeas.
Thank you. Tracy Miller is a new member of the Kent County MPO PAC. Other business. Counselor, do we have any executive session tonight scheduled?
Nothing, Mr. President.
Okay. Okay then. So I guess we just need to do item number 2. Mr. Angel.
Move to go into executive session immediately following the committee meetings of October 4th, 2022 for preliminary discussion on site acquisition for publicly funded capital improvement, legal strategy session regarding collective bargaining or pending or potential litigation, and personal matters pursuant to 29 Del Code 10004 B2, 4, and 9.
That is a motion. Need a second.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Angel, second by Commissioner Sweeney. I don't see any questions. Can we have roll call, please?
Mr. Angel?
Yes.
Mr. Buxton?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maston?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Pepper?
Yes.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 7 yeas.
Thank you. Roll call reveals the motion passed. Are there any information items this evening? Don't see any. Any public comments? Any public comments this evening? Any commissioners' comments? Mr. Maston.
Just one comment. I sincerely appreciate everybody's support on the solar. It's been a long year, and I wish the Nashes and Cartanzas could be here because it wasn't just them, it was also the Bonks, the Taylors, the Thompsons, and so many others that have reached out to me, and I know have reached out to Commissioner Senator-elect Buxton, but also to Mr. Angel, our Commissioner Angel, and I'm sure others. But without all your support, we would have never gotten this far, and it's just sad it took a year, and it's sad that, you know, a project did go through, which we're all going to have to live with, but I really appreciate everybody's support because this has probably been my biggest challenge since I got here over a year ago, but without all your support, it wouldn't have gone as easily as what it has. And again, I sincerely appreciate everybody's help, especially Mrs. Kiefer, who's not here, but she's just been wonderful to work with throughout this whole effort. Thank you.
Great. Any other commissioner comments?
Yes.
Mr. Angel.
I just want to bring up kudos to the IT department. They're moving us forth in, our new email address and Office 365, and with the Tyler Technologies moving forth, we're finally moving into the technical world of how things go. One of the things that when I go to NACO, I always talk on my committees, the GIS and telecommunications and IT, they always forget. They start using acronyms that don't mean anything to me because I'm not into the whole thing. So it's always great to have what it stands for. And I always bring them to this comment that I always say this. I said the difference between an old techie like myself and a new techie is when you go to an elevator, watch how they push the button. Us old techies will use our first finger. The new techies will use their thumb because they're and you'd be surprised how everybody looks at that and comes back and says they were laughing when they're saying it. Say, oh yes, we see that. So, but us old techies can still be taught, is what I'm trying to say. Thank you.
Any other commissioner comments?
One rather quick one. Shout out to Commissioner-elect Paul Hertz, who's in the crowd and is getting his feet wet with a 10:15 meeting for somebody who has to hit the alarm clock at 4 in the morning. That's not an easy task.
That's good for him. Good for him. Yeah, he beat me to the punch. I was going to ask the commissioner-elect if he had any closing commissioner comments. Look forward to many more meetings with you. All right, I need a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Madison, second by Commissioner Angel. All in favor, aye? Don't think so? Goodbye.